Crean, and you're listening to Hodge-Cast.
Matt Crehan was born into athleticism. Being the son of an Olympian and long-distance runner, Matt was destined for greatness. Matt has competed and won both the Manchester and Liverpool marathons back-to-back in 2021. And he's also represented his country in the sport of long-distance running alongside such legends like Sir Mo Farah. However, it hasn't always been limelight and glory for Matt. He too, like you watching this, has had his fair share of bad days. And on this episode, we talk through the highs and lows of being a professional athlete.
I always thought in my head I wouldn't touch the marathon until I was 30. It disappears off and I'm sitting there and I'm just doing my vest and stuff. Again, it's October, I'm getting cold and I'm sitting here and half an hour passes, I'm still sort of sat here and you've already done the hard work of getting yourself on the elite start line. He said now you've got to make your body bulletproof so that you're not getting injured, you're finishing it with these guys. The commentators loved it, they were having a right field day taking the mick out of me doing it. I think a lot of people counted me out then after that. I wasn't going to even finish the race, to be fair. He dragged me up and down the country to any race. He always said, we never had that much cash growing up or anything like that, but he said if it's running related, we spend it. I need a new pair of shoes, we got the pair of shoes. He had a major heart attack. It was like 99.9% blockage of his main coronary artery. Like you just that much buzzing of atmosphere, and the crowds are, they just told the winners coming through.
What is one piece of advice you could give to someone who wants to start running? Hello listeners, my name is Daniel Hodges. I'm a philanthropist, a fundraiser, a world record holder, and now a podcast host. However, my most noteworthy title is, like you listening to this, I too am just a human being with a few stories to tell. I've been at rock bottom, the lowest of the low, even attempting suicide, to then change my life around and be on top of the world. I've fundraised thousands of pounds over the years for various different charities, from running marathons, to jumping out of planes, to climbing mountains, to even getting my face punched in a boxing ring. I think it would be fair to say I've had my fair share of challenges in this funny old game called life. This podcast is my way of giving back, using the challenges I've overcome as a catalyst so that others can open up how they've overcame theirs. Each guest we have on the show will talk about a time in their life where they've had to overcome adversity, and hopefully you, the listener, can take inspiration from their life experiences. Thank you. You are now listening to Hodge-Cast. What is your challenge? Matt Crean is the son of a former Olympian and a competitive runner from my hometown of St Helens. Matt's most notable achievements are winning the Manchester Marathon and Liverpool Marathon, just 2 weeks apart from each other, and he's gone on to represent England at the sport as well. He's a business owner, fitness coach and publisher. Today we'll not only go over Matt's sporting accolades, but also his personal life away from the pavements and roads. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem at all. So obviously we'll touch on this as the show goes on, but for our regular viewers will probably notice we're in a different setting today. This is of course your store Made to Run, which of course we'll touch on and give a little plug as the show goes on. So what I generally do with most of my guests is I kind of strip it back. So even though the obvious elephant in the room is you're a runner, I do try to strip it back to what I call sort of humble beginnings. Yeah. So as we're both from, so was you born in St Helens?
No, my mum and dad were.
Okay.
But I was born in Ashton, in Makerfield, so just down the road, so technically a pieter.
Okay. Yeah. So I suppose when did you kind of sort of integrate towards St Helens, or did you grow up in Ashton?
So I grew up in Ashton, to be fair, but once I graduated uni and stuff like that, I bought a house in Newton Willows. And then we're sort of on the St Helens side of things.
Yeah.
I've always run for St Helens, Sutton AC. I haven't always run for them. My first club as a teenager was Wigan Harriers. But since I was about 16, 17, I've always run for St Helens Sutton. And then obviously into the St Helens Park run and the rest of it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, my question what I would have asked is what was it like growing up in St Helens, but you've grown up in Ashton. So I imagine it's pretty, they're neighbouring one another, aren't they? So it's pretty similar demographics.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time in St Helens. Like, my grandparents were lived in St Helens, Hurstfinch and Parr. That's where my mum and dad grew up and things like that. So yeah, we spent a lot of time, especially with me. My mum's parents and stuff like that at theirs and around Hurstfinch and Hurstfinch Park and stuff like that. And always walking into the town, coming to M&S and things like that. It used to be in the town centre.
Yeah, back when it was a beacon of business. Yeah. Now it's pretty deprived. Yeah. But okay, so one thing that I kind of knew about you, but I didn't know too much, so you can expand on it. Is now both my parents were chefs, right. So obviously I kind of grew up. I'm in hindsight now, I kind of sort of took it for granted, but I grew up with fantastic meals, as you would, having two chefs for parents. Whereas you, on the other hand, you had two athletes essentially as parents. Yeah. So do you want to just give us a little bit of sort of like who your mum is, what she's done, and then obviously who your dad was and what he did, and then of course growing up in that environment.
Yeah. So my mum's Susan Crean. She represented Great Britain at the Rome World Championships in 1987. It was the first ever women's 10,000 metres in the World Championships, and then she went on to run the following year in the Olympic Games in the marathon. So she was raised in Parr, then moved to Hurstfinch, ran for St Helens Sutton AC, all the life until the club had a split in the 80s, and then she moved to St Harriers in Manchester, which is they sort of headhunted her. It was either Liverpool or Sale, and having ran for St Helens, Liverpool Harriers was always sort of the rival club on the local scene, so she couldn't go there. So yeah, Sale was gathering a good team, and a couple of other St Helens runners, Anne Griffiths or Anne Williams back then, went to Sale as well. And then my dad was a good sort of county level runner. Again, ran for Sale. He went to St Cuthbert's in Parr, and then he was a lover of running, and probably where I get a lot of my love of it from, and just general interest rather than necessarily the full competitive streak, which is what my mum had, and still does to this day, to be fair. So he was a good county level runner. He represented Great Britain running for sort of like civil service back then. He worked for BT when it was sort of civil service, so he represented them against sort of other civil service companies and things like that, and against various countries and stuff like that when they had their different national teams racing against each other. And yeah, he very much ranged this. Cross country was his forte really, and then to be fair, his dad took up running. He was a miner, and when the pits closed at Bold Colliery, he took up marathon running at the age of 50. Stopped smoking and took up marathon running, because me mum and me dad both ran, and he saw them and he thought he'd do that, and he actually set up Derby Hill Runners, which has now become St Helens Striders. So he was the founder of St Helens Striders under its previous name, and then sort of he saw people doing long jump and triple jump and stuff like that, and actually got into the field events, to be fair, and was setting British records for over 60s, over 65s, over 70s. I think he took the over 80 long jump and triple jump record just before he had a stroke a couple of weeks after that, to be fair, but that was his last big sort of competition. He wanted to do that, so that was so around runners. My uncle was an international steeplechaser representing Great Britain in the Barriers. He was my mum's younger brother. He was about 10 years younger than my mum, so grew up around athletics. You've always been in it. So did you kind of know, was it kind of something you was born into, so it was kind of just come natural to you? Is it something that you took off, or was there a little bit of pressure there? Some people who don't. No, I mean, there was never any pressure, to be fair. And it didn't. It came naturally to me once I started doing it. But yeah, for a long time, like I showed. In my head, I always wanted to be a runner. I had posters at the Olympic sort of certificate that my mum had on the wall in the house, and we had like my mum's Olympic kit and stuff. I used to go to like non-uniform days where we had like, I think it was St George's Day and stuff like that, and I'd wear my mum's like Olympic tracksuit and stuff like that. So in my head, I always wanted to be a runner, but I never had the sort of, this was from like a young age. It was like, I'm going to be a runner when I grow up, but none of the sort of, understanding and knowledge of what it really takes to a dedication to do the running to the level that both of them did. And it wasn't until sort of high school, really. I was basically just a chubby little kid playing video games, to be fair, until I was probably about year 8. Year 9 is when I started at a running club, and it wasn't my parents that got me into it. It was the school teacher. I mean, my dad had always wanted me to get into running and go and do it, but it was like, no, I'm not interested, Dad, or it sounds like too hard work, I just want to sit in my room and play video games and stuff. And I played with my mates and stuff like that, playing video games. And then, one of my school teacher, Mr. Banks at Birchall High School, he knew about my mum and dad's running careers and what they used to do and stuff like that. And so he sort of said, you really should get into running. There's obviously some talent there, because I'd always take the when we did athletics in school really seriously and stuff. But as I say, as a chubby sort of little teenager, preteen, and wasn't that sporty and had no hand-eye coordination when it came to any other sports or anything like that. But I was committed, and we played rugby and stuff like that, and was awful with the ball and stuff like that, but I'd continue to run in for tackles and take them and stuff like that, no problem. So yeah, he knew the potential there, and he sort of said, you really should try and join an athletics club. And yeah, I think going into year 9, between year 8 and year 9, the summer, I just turned to my dad and said, Dad, I do fancy having a go at running. Like, can we go to the local club? At which point in Ashton Makerfield, pretty much we're evenly spaced between St Helens Sutton, Wigan Harriers, Lee Harriers, and even to Warrington, which was my dad's old club after he left Sutton. So it was a bit of like, well, where do we choose? We ended up picking Wigan for some reason, to be fair. So we went to Wigan Harriers, and I stayed there for probably 3 or 4 years, and then I got to a point where, in my first year after training, I just missed out on qualifying for the English schools, which at the age group I was at, sort of year 9, was sort of the highest pinnacle you could pretty much get to, at least within the UK and within England. And so, obviously, it came quickly, and it progressed really well from there. That I got to a point after 2 or 3 years at Wigan that it was like, well, there's no one really to train with here. The only person really to move on to the training group was Jenny Meadows. She's a well-known runner from Wigan and now commentator actually for the BBC and things like that on the athletics. And but her group was training in Manchester, and the odd occasion would be in Wigan. So it's like, well, it's not really going to suit. I think I was 15, 16 at the time. My dad's driving me around everywhere, stuff like that. Getting up to Manchester for 6:30 is going to be a bit mad. So at the time, St Helens Sutton had a really good runner called Dave Forrester, who was he'd broken Steve Cram's 1500 metre record for the age group for a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, and he went on to finish sort of 24th in the World Cross in 2008 when it was up in Edinburgh and things like that. So he was this real rising star and future talent for Great British running. And he was coached by a fellow called Ray Vose, who I still go and join in with and train with at Sutton, and who was a training partner of my uncle. So we sort of connected up with them and swapped over to running for St Helens Sutton, who I've still run for, and I'm club chairman of and things like that. So
no, it's always fascinating to get the guests to see the backstory, because like I touched on there that my parents being chefs, but I've literally just learned how to make a piece of toast. So it's good to see how you mentioned there that you was sort of a chubby kid playing video games. Preaching to the choir on that. I hated PE. It was my worst lesson. It's mad, really, because I absolutely love exercise and training and that now. And I know you wouldn't think it, but certainly back then that was my idea of hell, having to go out and do sort of, because they always seem to. It's always seemed to be like a wet and windy, gloomy day when we was out running. So so it was my idea of absolute hell. Just for any listeners who are watching who may not sort of be familiar, do you want to just give us like a little bit of a bite-sized definition of what sort of like the difference between cross-country running is as opposed to marathon running and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I mean, your cross-country running is, out on the fields, a lot of time in the UK it's sort of football pitches and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure we all did it at school, and most people, as you say, hated cross country. It was always done in the middle of winter, and it was seen as more of a form of torture or punishment than it was anything else. Which I always remember the lads in GCSE PE. We had to do netball, and obviously none of us wanted to do netball. And I was always quite well behaved, so I never messed around. But the lads always messed around, and the punishment was we had to get sent out on a 12-minute run. So as soon as we did netball, that was it. Then everyone was messing around. I was like, I'm joining you in it, because I'm quite happy to go and do a 12-minute run as punishment. It's good for me. But So yeah, cross country, it's mud. I always group it as, it's you against the elements really. It's just it's tough landscapes, running through the mud. Weather usually is miserable because it's the middle of winter. Your road running, anything from sort of 5Ks all the way up to sort of marathons, and obviously ultra marathons as well on the roads. Go anything above that 26.2 distance, 26.2 mile distance. And then, you've got your track athletics as well. So, sort of from your 100-metre sprints all the way to, your 10,000 metres and things like that on the track. I always think of that as like it's like the stage. It's the theatre of the track and field sort of world. It's where the drama happens. Obviously the likes of Usain Bolt and things. That was a pure performer. And same with Mo Farah on the track as well. Yeah. It's that arena. And the road for me is that I always think sort of like the more regal, gentlemanly sort of aspect of the running world. It's obviously there's plenty of other runners there, but it's you against the road. It's just single road track, and you follow it on from point to point and finish the race sort of thing. So
that's because I'll be honest with you, I didn't know the full definition. If someone had said to me then explain cross country, I'd have probably said something completely different. So no, just I suppose it's good for people to kind of get on that wavelength. So you're in school, you're kind of finding that you're excelling at these sort of physical activities. You mentioned that you enjoy getting disciplined at netball, so you could go for a run. So were kind of like, where did you, because you sort of kind of fell out of that sort of fell out of love, I should say, with that athletic sort of lifestyle, if you will, training and what have you. Was it because you got an injury, or was it, talk us through that moment?
Yeah, so it was, to be fair, it was as I went to uni, so up till then, I'd really excelled. My running was going from strength to strength. And then I went away to uni in Leeds, so not too far away from home, but enough that I was away from that sort of support base from my coach, from my family. And just about the same time, or a year previously, my dad had been diagnosed with cancer, and so it was very much like that year I was at home and finishing my A-levels and stuff like that. I was still training and everything was the same, but then when I went away to uni, being away from them, from my family and things, and my dad, who was, really sort of integral to my running. He'd drive me up and down the country to any race. He always said, we never had that much cash growing up or anything like that, but he said if it's running related, we spend it. If I need a new pair of shoes, we got the pair of shoes. That was that. And it sort of, I got injured when I went to uni. I was training on my own. I was training a bit too hard, and just because, mostly because I had more time on my hands to do stuff with being away. I got injured. The physios and doctors couldn't diagnose exactly what it was. They thought it was cartilage in my knee, thought it was IT band issues. So 6 months, it went sort of up and down of trying to find out what it was. And I kept eating as if I was training full time. So I put about 4.5 stone on. So I went from like 9 stone, 9 stone 10 or something like that to close on 14 stone in the space of 6 months. And when they finally diagnosed it, which it was IT band, literally this doctor said try this stretch out, and I was sorted. I was walking pain free, but I was 4.5 stone heavier, not the runner that I was, and mentally just wasn't there really to sort of get myself back into that sort of shape. And the enjoyment of running, it sort of, with my dad's diagnosis and stuff like that. He'd had a, back in 2006, I want to say, or 2008 maybe, no, 2006, December 2006, he'd had a major heart attack that was like 99.9% blockage of his main coronary artery. The doctors were terrified, to be fair, when he went into A&E. They couldn't understand what was wrong with him, how it had happened. It was hereditary. His mum had died young from heart problems. But madly that week, he'd had the heart attack on the Tuesday and ran with me 2 days before finally going into hospital and finding out he'd had a heart attack. And the only reason he survived it was because of his running. But sort of from that, then on to, he had a second heart attack in 2009, and that was a smaller heart attack, but it came a week before he did the Great North Run, funnily enough running for British Heart Foundation, because he got himself back fit after having his first heart attack. Went to do the Great North Run the week before, started feeling a bit ill, and so didn't train the week of the Great North Run, but him and my mum had booked a hotel in Newcastle and things like that, so they went up there to do it. He ran it, he backed off the pace that he wanted to do. He did 95 minutes. He was 55 at the time, so yeah, an hour and 35 for the half marathon. And the next day he got told, it was when he got told he was diagnosed with cancer, and then he told them he'd been feeling a bit unwell, so they did a couple of tests and found out that he'd had a heart attack the week before, which obviously delayed his cancer treatment then. Now, I was a science student at the time when he had his cancer treatment, when he had his cancer diagnosis, and when they sort of said that they wouldn't, it was in his bowels and it spread to his liver, they wouldn't be able to operate on the liver. It was spread too much, and it was just about controlling it. I pretty much knew at that point that it was a death sentence sort of thing. It was a matter of how long we had with him, and he didn't want to know how long, so we just sort of lived as it was. And being away from home and being at uni, just sort of left me a little bit out of it really, and not sure what I wanted to do training wise, and whether I wanted to carry on running, because I thought, what's the sort of point of doing this and the work to do this when actually, you keep yourself healthy and fit and stuff, and actually this is this is what happens to you, sort of thing. For a good while I just packed it in. I tried to keep involved in the sport. That's when I wrote my graphic novel and my comic book and stuff like that. I did a podcast for a while myself about athletics and things like that, so just to keep in touch with it. But yeah, my training went by the way for a good sort of 5 years.
So, well, first of all, appreciate you sharing that story. As I'm sure, like most of us watching this, if not all of us watching this, have been affected by cancer in some capacity. So I suppose I have to ask is, when you first found out that was the diagnostic, what was kind of like yours and your family's? I mean, obviously no one wants to hear that, of course they don't, but what was kind of like your thought process? You mentioned you were studying science, so you're quite clued up in it, so how was you when you first got the news?
Obviously it was pretty shocking, but the diagnosis, I take after my dad, so my dad's view on life was always, the positives in life, and live it to the most and to the fullest. And it's contradictory to what I've just said, obviously, regarding my own running sort of career at that time. But it was sort of like, well, take on the aspects of what we have got and treasure the time and things like that. For my mum, it was devastating. And I think to this day, she's never recovered from having lost my dad and things like that, really. They were together for close on 40 years. She's half a person really without him. And for my brother, I've got a younger brother, and he was only sort of, he was just going into high school or so at the time. So it was hard for him, and he takes after me mum more, so they're both little glass half empty, and me and my dad were always glass half full sort of people. So we sort of shied away and sort of hid in his room, and then by the time, as time went on, the years went by, he got a girlfriend, and he spent time just out with her and things like that. And whereas I tried to spend as much time as I could with my dad, to be fair. You say you shouldn't have regrets and stuff, but like, I always regret that I didn't stick with me running, because my dad loved it and he loved going to watch me race and things like that, and so he never saw me achieve the stuff I've achieved since. And he would have loved that sort of thing, because like I say, athletics to him was pure passion. Like, he was competitive, and he was an extremely talented runner, and sadly in a time when British athletics was really strong in depth, and he raced some of the top guys we ever put out. He had coaching sessions with Peter Coe, Seb Coe's dad and stuff, and had some fantastic races with people. But his times now would probably win most races, and he'd probably be side by side with me on the at the 10k and things like that. And to be fair, my mum's PB for 10,000 metres would put a second most years in the 10k. So as I always tease me mate John Joe, who's one of my good training partners. But it was sort of really tough. And I wish I'd carried on my training so he could have seen stuff, and given him that bit of joy from that, and obviously me the joy that I missed from running, really. And being away from uni made that harder. I think that was one of the reasons that did have me sort of stop me running and things, was because I wasn't there at home to spend time with my dad. I wasn't there at home for me mum and my brother and things. And so yeah, just for years, me running went by the way with that and stuff. So.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, as we touched on, it's horrible to get that news in any capacity. One thing that I did like what you said there, putting a bit of a positive on it, is how your dad lived live as they say, live like it's your last day on earth sort of thing, and that's really his testament, because we do kind of get wrapped up in life as a whole in general, and we all have bad days, be it at work or maybe you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. The harsh reality of it is you don't know when your time is, when your time's up. So it's something I try to adhere to. I mean, I can be a grumpy so-and-so when I want to be as well, but I do try and remain at that level of positivity. As I sort of, and I'm getting better at it with age, but certainly that's something that I'm sure has resonated with you, that you've got for your dad.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, like I watched my dad as we came towards the end and stuff, and he planned his funeral. Like he had fun. Like, and I sat there with him and we planned it. I was meant to be doing teacher training, to be fair. I'd finish uni, waiting for my exam results to meant to do teacher training, but I stepped away from it so I could spend the last couple of weeks and stuff with my dad. And we planned his funeral, and he was saying there's gonna be loads of people there, and me and my mum are like, well, are we sure? How many people are there gonna be and stuff like that? Might be no one, turn up, sort of thing. And he's like, oh no, there's gonna be loads. And he was like picking songs and stuff like that, and he wanted Another One Bites the Dust playing as he went in the creme sort of thing and stuff like that. My auntie persuaded him that might be a little bit too on the nose sort of thing, so had Spirit in the Sky.
Your eyebrows raised, I'm sure.
But he had a good laugh. We had obviously Chariots of Fire playing as we carried the coffin into the church and stuff like that. And he was right. There was tons of people. We had to go across the church hall and bring more chairs across and stuff like that to fill the back of the church, because we obviously when he did pass away, we put it into sort of the running magazine and stuff like that, and runners from all over came to see him sort of thing, because they were both him and my mum were well known on the northwest sort of and northern sort of running scene. That must have been
nice for you and the family to realise that he was well respected within his field. Because I mean that's something I'm sure we all aspire to be. You want to leave a legacy behind, don't you? I mean, I'm not religious or anything, and I couldn't possibly comment on what happens after death, sort of thing. But certainly, I'd want to be remembered for good things rather than sort of negative things. So I suppose that's where I'm going to with that. Yeah. So
and it was really good, and his the thing that really resonated with talking about obviously what we were saying, that living life to the fullest and things like that, and what I wrote in my dad's eulogy was that we related everything back to running, and I always relate everything back to running. It was that life was like a race, and it wasn't the one to cross the finish line first, but it was to take the most beautiful route. Sometimes you're going to take wrong turns on a run and stuff like that, but it was about spending it with the people that meant the most to you, doing the things that made you happy and made you feel fulfilled and things like that, and being able to at the end of it look back on that race and feel that you made it worthwhile.
That's a great metaphor there. And obviously it ties into what you're all about. But no, I just want to say, sort of on a personal level, appreciate you coming on and sharing that. But obviously it is personal sort of time in your life, and obviously what's been a negative, you've kind of made a bit of a positive from it, in a sense that you've got back into running, or you got back into that. So talk us through that sort of transition where you'd had your injury in uni, you kind of put weight on, your dad wasn't well and obviously inevitably passed over. Where did the motivation come? Where did you kind of get that fire in your belly again?
So I stopped running about 2010. And then it was about 2000. So my dad passed away 2013, summer 2013, and it wasn't really until 2015, 2016, to be fair, that I started running again. And at that time, I'd been in a relationship for a long-term relationship, and my partner at the time left, and I think I'd sort of still been sort of grieving from the loss of my dad, and then she left, and it was a bit of a well, okay, me life as I know it doesn't exist now, sort of thing. I've got to work out what it is I do and what I want to do, sort of thing. And I thought, well, I loved running. That's what I love doing. I've not done it for so many years now, and I was just about turning 25. I was just coming up to my 25th birthday, and I thought to myself, I'm still young enough to give this a go and a shot. My mum was 32 when she went to the Olympic Games, so I thought, there's 7 years here. 2024 will be my 32nd year on the planet, sort of thing. So I'll hit the same age as my mum, and obviously Paris Olympics is there, which would be the dream. But I thought, let's give it a go, and it was a matter of how do I get back into this? And to be fair, I jumped in probably a little bit. I was still overweight. I was still carrying that extra weight, and so I spent probably the first 2-3 months in the gym. I never really had done gym work at all, but it's high intensity. You can burn fat off and obviously convert to muscle and stuff like that quite good. So yeah, I basically do, I think, sort of 10-20 minutes on the treadmill as a bit of a warm-up, and then I go into circuits for an hour, and then cool down with another 10-20 minutes on the treadmill, and that was basically my routine for 2 or 3 months, to shift the weight. And yeah, I brought myself back from about 14 and a half stone down to just under 12, and then from there then obviously started to add the running to it, and I jumped in a little bit too deep, to be fair. I love researching and reading all the stuff of the sport, and like I say, take after my dad, and he was a historian of the sport, and I was sort of the same, and so I was picking up sort of my Mo Farah's biography, and Alberto Salazar, his coach at the time's biography and stuff like that, and they were sort of saying, he was saying that Mo and Galen Rupp, who was Mo's training partner, didn't run anything slower than like 6-minute mile pace. So I was like, right, okay, I'm not going to run anything slower than 6-minute mile pace. So every run I was just hammering it. And it was great. I got myself to 60 miles and then up to 70 miles a week, higher than I'd ever sort of run as a teenager, sort of thing. It used to be maybe 50 was as far as I'd ever run. And then I did that for about 2 months, and then injury struck because I overtrained and pushed too hard, sort of thing. And then I sort of, in that sort of rest from that injury, sort of looked at it and thought, well, it was a bit stupid, that, wasn't it? Because that's Mo Farah. He's an double Olympic gold medalist. At that point, I think actually Rio had been. So yeah, he was quadruple Olympic gold medalist, sort of thing. You're like, well, you probably shouldn't be pushing it at that, trying to run what he's trying to run when you're trying to just get back into it. Yeah. So then, I got back into it, went back to Sutton and training there under my coach Ray. Vos, and just sort of got back into the groove. And I think the first race I really did was the first ever St Helens Striders trail 5 miler. Yeah, couple weeks of training, or a couple months of training under me, and went, and my hip went on me. I had to pull out, but I was determined the year later to come back and win that sort of thing. And just built from there. And
So when you got back into running, did you kind of have, obviously the first goal was to lose the weight.
Yeah.
Did you kind of have like a specific target what you wanted to do? Was it just a case you wanted to get back into it, or did you want to kind of push yourself to do a marathon, or where was you at in your headspace when it comes back to running?
First off, it was like, well, I want to try and make the Olympics by the time I'm 32, the same age as my mum, sort of thing. I've always believed in, going back to like my dad, to make the most of life and stuff like that, is that you've got to aim for the very top and see how close you get, sort of thing, and where you fall maybe on the way. But if you don't aim for it, you've got no chance at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was the goal. Now, what distance it was completely, I wasn't sure. I'd always been an 800 meter. 1500 meter runner in the past when I was running as a teenager. So I thought, I'm going to come back as a miler. Let's try and break 4 minutes for the mile this first year back. Let's jump straight into it, and then we'll build from there. And and that's how I trained. I trained to try and be a miler that first year. And I realised as we hit the summer and went into sort of the track work and into sort of 1500 meters and mile races, that I just didn't have that pure speed, that explosive speed that some of the lads who were under 20 years of age sort of had, really. And I didn't really enjoy that necessarily that type of training anymore either, because it is a lot more speed intensive and there's a lot more gym work, and I was never a big fan of being in the gym. I just wanted to be out on the roads and run and the trails and stuff like that. So that sort of went, maybe the mile isn't going to be the distance. And knowing that my mum was really a 10,000 meter runner, I thought, well, maybe the 5 and 10 will be where it's at. So the next year I focused on the 5,000 meters and tried to get better at that. And the goal was to try and break 15 minutes. I was doing the park runs every week and things, and I got down to 15 minutes and 1 second in the summer, and I was like, this is so frustrating, so disappointing. There's so much hard work training into it, and then went into winter, and November there's a race called the Podium 5K, which has now become really well known as being this ridiculously fast, quick course. It's a cycle track up in sort of Barrowford, just outside sort of Clitheroe and things, and it's like four and a bit laps of this course, and it's smooth, flat surface, and you just get a good group of guys all go there. So I went there. It was cold, sort of miserable weather. I think that the weekend before I'd been at Rainhill Beer Festival, and then gone out and done my first ever sort of like marathon in training. I just like woke up, I think still drunk a little bit, and said, I'm going to run a marathon today, and went out and got to the marathon distance, and thought, I felt easy that, I might try and see if I can get to 30. And I got to 28 miles, and my body went, you said a marathon, not 30, and I just sort of literally stopped in my tracks on the Sankey Valley, and had to sort of crawl back home in the Willows. So yeah, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel doing this 5K, because I was a bit mad really to have done that. I rocked up and I saw all these faces of all these people that I used to compete against that were still competing, and lots of new faces as well. And my plan was just to sit in the pack and get dragged around to a quick time. Anyway, we got one lap round, and I was like, I feel really easy here. I found myself leading the race. I thought, this is not where I should be. I knew there's a good couple of Liverpool area lads who I know really well, and who I know well under 15 minute sort of times at that time. I thought, I shouldn't be leading this, but I feel good. Let's keep pushing, and I led all the way to the last sort of 300 metres, where John Ashcroft, who actually is another St Helens lad actually, who now lives in Leeds, he was in there, and he was a good 1500 metre runner. He came sprinting past me in the last 200-300 metres of the race, and I finished second, but I ran 14:30. So my goal was to try and break 15, and I destroyed it. And I haven't really got that much quicker, to be fair, since then. Down to 14:18 is my best for 5K, but it sort of showed, the distances sort of thing is definitely maybe more where I'm suited, and I then went on then to try and put in a couple 100-mile training weeks and things like that, and build the mileage up even more, and went over to Armagh and raced the 5K out there, which was an amazing experience, because it's been going for a good couple of years now. This year was the first year it's come back since COVID. I've missed this year, but I don't run 5Ks much anymore. But back then I went out there, and basically the whole village. It's the half-term holidays in February out there, and the whole sort of village town knows that this race is coming on. It starts in the day, with like kids races from the schools and stuff, and they all come in. But I got I got paid to go out there. It was the first time ever as an athlete, and I wasn't like the top billing sort of athletes. There was guys a lot faster going out there. But yeah, we got our flights paid for, we got our hotels paid for, we got some spending money and stuff like that, and it was like, oh, this is quite a cool sort of thing. And then, but I got there 2 days before the race, and we're coming out from the hotel with the guys. Got a shared room with a couple of guys. Shows we weren't the top billing athletes. They had private rooms themselves, but we went out and we're doing like a couple of miles, and like the whole town is like going, like little kids are like, mum, dad, are they going to be racing and stuff like that? And it's all buzzing around this race that happened in basically the town square. It's just about a K a lap.
So all this excitement's just for a
5K, yeah.
Wow.
So, but it's kids races early on, like shorter distances, and it just goes through the day until like the highlight event, which is the elite 5K. At the end of it, it's got the women do a 3K, and then the men do the 5K. And you've got England teams there. You usually have a US team flies over for it, and yeah, because it's this circuit. Obviously, everyone's just in the middle of the park that's in the middle of it, and it's on the road round it, and everyone's just buzzing. It's all lit up, and it goes off at like breakneck speeds, and it's basically as hard as you could go from the start to finish. Like you just try and hold on, and I ran a PB there and finished in the top 25, and. Yeah, I was really pleased with the performance. Beat quite a few of the guys that had been selected for England in it and stuff like that, which was always nice to do when you're especially when you wanted to get in the team and weren't selected, sort of thing. So it was quite nice, and yeah, I think I was the fastest as well in the guys who I was sharing the room with and stuff like that. So I was like, yes, that's a good one, even though one of the lads is quicker than me, but not on their night. And annoyingly, there was a Domino's pizza right on the corner of the racetrack every lap, and I was like, right, I'm going in there after this race. That's where I'm going.
So that was your motivation.
That was
usually like carrot dangle in front. No, Domino's pizza. Okay, so you've touched on there. So something, I mean, unbelievably, I know you wouldn't think it looking at us both. We've both actually ran marathons before. Obviously, you can work out who's the faster of the two. But certainly, for me, I'd kind of like a marathon's the benchmark in sort of physicality in terms of anything. So you touched on there, you've got natural talent. Obviously, you probably got it from your parents as well with regards to running quick. Yeah. Where was kind of like the sort of the catalyst that made you want to go, right, I'm doing this, I'm taking to the speed aspect of it, but now I want to transition into more long distance. And talk us through your first marathon, what it was, the prep for it, all that sort of stuff.
So I always thought in my head I wouldn't touch the marathon until I was 30, because traditionally in distance running, in middle distance running, you only go to the marathon when you start to lose your speed. And I mean, it's one of those annoying questions that as a runner you typically get asked, because everyone knows the marathon, people understand it, you watch the London Marathon, things like that. So you'd always get asked, when what's your marathon time? And I go, I don't run marathons, it's not what I do. I'd be like, they're confused by it. And so, I always said I wouldn't touch one till I was 30. And then just as I was coming up to about 27, me coach at the time sort of said, I thought you might have a crack at the marathon this year, sort of thing. And I thought, well, if you're thinking that, then maybe I will. So I entered Chester Marathon in October, and I think this would be 2017, I think. 2018, maybe. No, 2018 it would have been, it was after those 5Ks. So I entered that. I was training for it, did the Warrington half marathon that year, finished third in that. I think in something like 69 minutes or something. So it was my PB for me half marathon, and that was like 4 weeks out to Chester. So I was like, yeah, that's brilliant. I'm in shape. I'm, where we want to be for this marathon debut. And then 2 days after that, I was doing a hill effort in Sherdley Park. Saw this fallen branch, and said that looks dangerous. That fallen branch. I kept doing the hill efforts, another one, and then the sun was just going down. I stepped on this fallen branch, rolled my ankle, did all 3 ligaments, and that was Chester gone. So it wasn't then. So I went back then to 5 and 10Ks. Once my leg healed up, I thought, that's it, I'll leave the marathon again for a couple of years. And I was meant to do London in 2020. And obviously COVID hit.
Yeah.
So I was training. I was following sort of Charlie Spedding, who's one of our greatest of all time marathon runners. He's won the bronze medal in the LA Olympic Games in the marathon. 209 runner, or 208 runner, sorry. And so following his training plan that he had in the back of his autobiography and things like that. And COVID hit, and that was that. So I was really fit. So I actually went out and did a marathon at like tempo pace. My goal was basically try and run faster than my mum had run for the marathon, which was 2 hours and 35 minutes. So I went out and during COVID and went out for my run and just did that.
Just sorry, I know you're on a roll. Just the thought of going at that pace.
So I went and did 2:34. So my mum, and then I told my mum, and she said, "Well, it doesn't count because it wasn't a race, was it?" Sort of thing. So I was like, "Okay, still need to do that one to get faster than you yet." And then coming through 2020, there was talks of there being a marathon possibly being put on as an elite only race in Wales. It was going to be on like a little loop, sort of like a 3-mile loop in Wales. There's going to be 400 runners max, men and women. Cut-off point was 2 hours 40 for the men and 3 hours for the women. And it was put on by the guys who do like the Mid-Cheshire 5K and things like that. And I was like, okay, well, there we go. Put that in my diary. That's my plan. That was going to be October. Because, they were going to do London. They did the London Marathon, and they did an elite-only London Marathon, so they were going to do that. I tried to get in that, but because I hadn't run a marathon yet, and my half time was just a little bit too slow, they wouldn't take me. But I managed to get into a half marathon in the lead up, which would have been a month before this elite race out in Antrim. And again, it was an elite race, so I was flown out there. We was all COVID protocols and stuff like that. there was 25 men in the A wave, which I was in, which I got to run alongside Mo Farah, because Mo Farah was racing it because there was no races. He just broke the 1 hour record for distance on a track a week prior to it. And so I was like, okay, Mo Farah's in the race. Mark Scott was there, who just broke Mo Farah's 5,000 metre British record and just missed the European 5k record. And so it was like, this is a great race. I can go for a quick time. It's going to be a fast course. And I mean, it was. I ran a great PB, 65:23, I think. It was quite undulating though, the course. It wasn't what I expected, sort of speed-wise. But it was good fun. It was great to be a part of, and it was great build up then to this race. It was going to be in October, and then basically they got told, because Wales went stricter on its COVID regulations, that the race couldn't go ahead, and it was cancelled. And so that was another marathon gone. At which point I was like, oh, what's the point in this sort of thing? And I just I think I took October and November off pretty easy. But then they started to talk about, April. They're going to put the same race, organise it again, but we're going to go for April, and we'll have the course in Wales. It's going to be in Wrexham, and we'll do a backup course in Cheshire, just in case Wales is still sort of stuck. Obviously, we then went into another lockdown again as January 2021 rolled around. So it was like, oh, is this marathon going to go ahead? Not. I thought, well, I've just got to keep focused because it's keeping me training. Luckily when April came round, it stayed on, and obviously I trained for it. Annoyingly, my training for it had been all on a treadmill. So I got injured. We had a bit of ice in January 2021, and I went out for a run. I must have rolled my ankle slightly on the ice. I hadn't noticed it. About 2 hours after I got home, I thought, my ankle's really sore, and looked at it, and it ballooned up. So I was like trying to get in to see a physio and stuff, which wasn't easy during that sort of time. Saw someone eventually, and I had a good treadmill, and I said, well, I can run on the treadmill, but it really hurts to run outside, like on the camber of the road. And they said, well, if he said, if you can run on the treadmill and the flat surface and it doesn't hurt, then you should be okay to keep training. So yeah, I was doing 100 to 120 mile weeks on a treadmill.
Was that not? Because I just find doing anything on a treadmill, 5 minutes and I'm gone. Like, I can't even like putting music or a podcast or something on. I just need to. I don't know. I just feel like I'm better on the road with surroundings and stuff going on.
Totally, yeah. It was mind numbing. I think like the first couple of weeks were really hard going, but I think with treadmill running, once you've got into the groove of doing it, it's a lot easier. You still have to distract yourself, but I was basically just putting on like loads of like running videos and stuff like that, and like watching loads of YouTube clips of runners from the past and races and things like that. Found my mum's London Marathon where she qualified for the Olympics. That was someone had uploaded the whole stream that had been on the BBC and whatever for that. So like I got to watch that race, and towards the end, obviously when she's coming in, they're trying to find out who's the third Brit, because that would be the qualifying spot for the Olympics, and they realise it's my mum sort of thing. So that was really good. And my dad gets quite a bit of footage on there as well, because he's running with the women's winner, which I think was Ingrid Christensen. For most of the race, he's running about the same pace as her, so he's on all the footage alongside her, which was really nice to see him. He didn't have a great day, to be fair, at it, but so yeah, it was tough, and it was only probably about 3 weeks before the marathon I actually was able to run outside, and I went and did another podium 5k race was organised. I thought, well, I love racing there. Let's see whether or not this fitness that I feel like I've done by running on a treadmill is actually real, because the big thing with the treadmill is that obviously all you got to do is set it to the speed and stay on it. And it's in your head, you're a little bit doubtful of that fitness, because I've been setting it at like 5 minute mile pace, because the Olympic qualifying standard was 2:11:30, and I was like, well, I've got nothing to lose for going for it. I'll either do something special and run it and have a chance of being qualifying for the Olympics, or like I won't, and that'll be that. Because I don't have a clue how it's going to go. And my mum had been saying, you need to practice with your fuel and your nutrition and stuff. And but then she kept saying, but we didn't really had it in my day. She just had water and stuff. And she was like, well, she kept saying as well, because she was never really a marathon runner. She obviously went to the Olympics in the marathon, but it wasn't a focus. It wasn't what she trained for specifically. So she kept saying, well, I wasn't a marathon runner, so what do I know? And I said, well, yeah, what do you know, sort of thing. So I kept ignoring her when she said, you need to do this. And so marathon day came, and went off. We had pacemakers in for 2:11:30, and sort of went with the pack and stuff like that. And there was a half marathon as well. So the majority of the guys who went with that front pack and the pacemaker was actually guys doing the half, really. But it was good to have a group around and sort of running with them. And I managed to start getting a blister in the arch of my foot, which as a guy who owns a running shop was a dreadful thing to occur to me. But it was a new pair of shoes that, again, I hadn't really practiced on apart from running on a treadmill a couple of times in them. So, but it taught me a lesson of making sure I make sure I put some sort of like Vaseline or something on the arches of my feet and things and prepare me feet for racing in those shoes. And so that hit me about 4 miles in. I could feel this sort of aching on the arch of my foot, and I thought it was like a little crinkle in my sock or something like that. So I stopped, took my shoe off, in the race, thinking if it's a crinkle in my sock, I'll get it straight and it won't ruin it. And I can pick up the time, and realised it wasn't. And it ended up being a blood blister, like the full size of the length of the arch of my foot by the end of the race, because I carried on through it. But I didn't take any nutrition. I didn't practice with it. I thought I'd done marathon distances in training without anything. I thought I'll just do it. But there's a difference between doing the distance in training and doing the distance at race pace. And like, I'd set myself a couple goals. So one, the big goal was try and run the Olympic qualifying standard to 11:30. It was then try and break 2:14, which is the Commonwealth Games qualifying standard for the year later. And then it was under 2:17, which would usually rank you in the top 10 in the UK. And then it was under 2:20, because that was if I didn't run under 2:20, I was going to be devastated with it. So I didn't fuel and got to about 18 miles, started to get a bit of a stitch, and then 19 miles needed a wee. 20 miles, thought, right, I'm going to stop for a wee, because maybe it'll help me get rid of the stitch and I can just crack on. 2 laps left of this loop, and I'll finish it off. So I stopped, had a wee, got rid of the stitch, but my legs did not want to move again. They were gone. And so the last 10k of it was horrific, just absolute crawling. And even going into the last lap, I was like, if I can just pick up the pace just a little bit, I can still break 2:20. It just didn't happen. I ran 2:23, 2023 minutes, and I was absolutely devastated with it. It was and everyone kept saying, "That's a fantastic time, 2:23 for your debut marathon," but I'd set myself 2:20 was all I was going to be happy with under that, and I was devastated with it. And then I decided, right, what's the next one? I need a new one to enter. I need to sort this out and get the nutrition right and get this right. And so we entered Manchester Marathon then.
No, brilliant. I mean, you sort of said there at 2 hours 23. I mean, that's just a remarkable time. But I get where you're coming from. In your head, that was your goal. You wanted to get under that. So there's nothing.
That was my slowest goal,
Yeah. So that's what I mean. So it was kind of you can't. So you still had that appetite, because the next question I was going to ask you was sort of like, you've done one marathon. How do you stay motivated? But if you've never hit your goal on the first time, what your personal goal, then obviously you've still got that. That's kind of that feather in your cap that's eluding you a little bit. You sort of want to put forward for it. So You've ran your first marathon in Chester, and obviously you mentioned that you wanted to transition and to do it again, because you kind of had that thing eluding you, escaping you. But I suppose this comes into sort of some achievements. I mean, running a marathon's a massive achievement in itself, but you obviously want to get that time. That's what you want to sort of beat. So you signed up to Manchester in 2021. Ironically, I ran in that race as well. I thought I'd give you a little bit of an advantage. I sort of took my time a little bit, maybe stretched it off. But talk us through how you got to sign up to Manchester. What was kind of like, where was you at? Did you know you wanted to sign up to this to kind of beat that time, or?
Yeah, it was sort of so basically. I finished the one in Chester. Was devastated with the time. Was like, right, okay, I need another marathon on the plans, like. And I mean, to be fair, it took me a little while to recover from that marathon. It threw me off a little bit, and I actually went on I saw Manchester. I'd run the half marathon back in 2019 there, and so it's a similar bit of the, similar sort of course, obviously less distance, and so I knew bits and pieces of it. London was on at the same time, and it was the same weekend actually. I'd never really been that interested in the London Marathon. It just wasn't one. I think like most of the biographies of marathon runners I'd read were all like American marathon runners, and like Boston and New York were the two like big ones. And in my head, out of the big marathons, if I was going to go and do one, it was going to be Boston or New York. So I thought to myself, you know what, Manchester, it's local, let's go do it. It also hadn't been running under 220 for a good couple of years, and it had a $2,500 payday for the winner. So I was like, well, I want to run under 220. So one, that gives me a decent shot at trying to win it. London's the same weekend, so the real fast lads are going to head to London. And obviously there's a lot more money up for grabs for them at London as well, to be fair. So I thought, well, yeah, that's Manchester. Let's do that. And weirdly enough, I went on my first date with my girlfriend at the time, and she sort of said, what running you into, stuff like that sort of thing. I said, I was going to do Manchester. She said, I think her mum was doing it, or thinking about doing it. And she said, what do you think you'll do with it? I said, I'm going to win it. I'm going to win it. Because I've been on about reading up on like, you've got to be confident on these dates, first dates and stuff like that. And I don't know what she thought of me at that time. Like after saying that, like I'm going to win Manchester. But
who's this?
I know. But I'd written it down as well in like a little diary with all my goals, like, and the goal for that year was win Manchester Marathon. That's what I wrote down. So that was the plan then, and then trained. Luckily, it being in October, was able to train through the summer for it, and that was much more enjoyable than training on the treadmill and things like that. There's a lot of solo miles, a lot of just running on my own a lot of the time. Doing various workout stuff. I brought on a coach, to be fair, because I'd sort of coached myself for the first marathon, and that was another thing that I realised that I think I'd maybe trained a little bit too hard at times and overdone it and stuff, and I probably needed someone just to sort of hold me accountable to and rein me in a little bit and sort of build it. And so the sort of plans I'd sort of found and coached myself to, I reached out to. They were a group out in America in Flagstaff in Arizona called the NAZ Elite. So they're the Hoka sponsored sort of group, and I'd read the book that the coach had written with one of the runners in there, followed them all on Instagram and stuff, and I thought, I'll get in touch with them. And the head coach couldn't coach me because he didn't have the time, but a couple of his athletes also sort of coached and were obviously great marathon runners. So a fella called Rory Linkletter became my coach, and he's a 2:10 marathon runner, runs for Canada. He's actually doing London this year. He finished 20th in the world championships last year in the marathon for Canada and things like that. So he was writing me plans, and we were chatting on WhatsApp and Zoom calls and stuff like that sort of thing to catch up and every so often. Sort of built towards Manchester Marathon.
One thing we'll touch on there, obviously we've mentioned, you kind of got hit with COVID and the pandemic, which was kind of interfering with what you wanted to do. These marathons are typically in April, aren't they? And obviously Manchester was put back to October, so I just wanted to let the listeners know in case they were like, hang on, aren't they usually in April? So you mentioned my training, obviously being a 17 stone lad, 16 generally on race day, I hated training in the warm weather. I absolutely hated it. So my training was it was a bit lacklustre at the best of times. But would you say that you felt going into this race, because obviously I know you're a runner, but you'd only ever done one marathon, so you kind of went into the unknown in terms of how the body's going to react at certain points. Did you feel, I know you touched on, you made that remark to your girlfriend, but did you feel confident in yourself that you'd done what you could on the build up to that race? Yeah,
I think so, I mean, going into it, it was sort of, the training had gone really well. I'd practiced my nutrition, I'd sort of sampled various gels and stuff like that, and in the end used the SAS gels, because that's what's on the course in Manchester, that's what's sponsored by, so I thought might as well use what's there, don't need to carry as many. Trialled out different shorts and stuff to work out what I was going to wear. I had 14 miles at marathon pace, was one of my last long hard run, and basically I worked out a route which was on the East Lancs, so I got my mum to drive me down to Worsley, on a Saturday morning before we opened the shop. She drove me down to Worsley. I did 2 miles warm up, 2.5 miles warm up round Worsley, and then jumped on the East Lancs and just started running back towards St Helens. And she drove back to, I think it's the Toby Carvery, I think sort of around just after Lee. On this side of Lee. So she drove up to there and got a little table out, put a bottle of water on it, and set it up ready for me to practice grabbing the water as I ran past. And then there was a bin about half a mile further down the road. And weirdly enough, I was watching all these YouTube videos of all these different runners out in the States, mostly training. And one of the things I picked up on fueling and stuff like that was to carry the water bottle. With you, whatever I'd tried to do in the past when I'd raced half marathons or anything like that, if I was trying to take on water, I tried to just get it down me as quick as possible so I could get rid of the bottle. It wasn't carrying this extra thing. And one of the coaches said to me, he said, right lads, he said, just keep it with you now. Keep it with it. He said, don't worry, next half mile, just run with it. Just keep sipping it as you need over this next half mile. And by doing that, like, it's a lot easier to take on the water to get to you, and the same with the gel. To sip the gel as over a half a mile, sort of 400 meters, half a mile sort of distance. No rush on it, because the main thing is getting it into the body. Whereas you try and rush it, you don't tend to. If you're using water, you tend to end up choking yourself because you swallow it too quick. And I'm very good at choking myself on water and things like that. So yeah, it was. That was really useful. So I felt like I'd got that nailed down. That was going to be right. I sort of had an idea in my head of when I was going to take my gels in the race, which I knew was always going to have to be flexible, because they always they always say you want a plan of when you're going to use your gels and stuff like that. Mine was like 8 miles, and then sort of around 14, 15 miles, and then as and when. But you've got to sort of take them when you need them, because if I'd have waited to 8 miles, in the end in Manchester I needed it at 6, and if I'd have waited till 8, I'd have been spent. That energy I needed that sooner, and it'd have been too late. So you've got to be able to be flexible, and sometimes people can be a little bit too rigid with the marathon plans, especially the fueling plans. But you've got to be flexible on that. So yeah, going into Manchester, I was fired up for it. I'd seen the entry list. We got sent the elite entry list, so I knew who was going to be there, and I knew there was a couple of lads that potentially were the ones to watch out for. On the day, none of them were there actually, apart from a lad that wasn't on the entry list who'd entered last minute, because I'd gone and done the Great North Run for the first time 4 weeks before, and that was sort of me test of fitness as well. So we had my marathon pace run, 14-mile marathon pace run down the East Lancs, and then the Great North Run. Now that was the year the Great North Run changed the route because of COVID. So instead of it being a point-to-point course, starting in Newcastle and finishing in Gateshead, it basically started in Newcastle and finished in Newcastle, and it was really undulating and really hilly, and was horrible. Wasn't great for the spectators, apart from at the finish sort of and start point. And I'm known for going off fast and hard, and I thought to myself, I knew what goal I wanted to try and run, because people run quick times at the Great North Run, but obviously I wasn't aware of what this course was really going to be like until I got onto it. And there's some big names with the Olympics had just been. Quite a few of the headliners had just come from the Olympics doing the marathon there. Galen Rupp was there and so on. And I thought, well, they're going to go off. It's downhill start the first mile. They're going to go off in no faster than 4:30 for the first mile. I thought, well, I can manage that pace for the first mile downhill, and then I'll just relax. So I did, and yeah, they went through in about 4:27, 4:28, so around about that 4:30 mark. And yeah, I nicely in me St Helens Sutton vest on the BBC Sport, just behind Galen Rupp and things like that, which was quite nice. And the club, a nice little promotion for the club and things. And then yeah, backed off the pace, but it was relentless. These just rolling hills I just didn't expect. And I got to about
Boston's like that as well. I
believe.
Boston.
So Boston's got from like around mile 18. It's got like 6 miles of rolling hills. It's downhill all the way to that point, and then it's rolling hills from mile 18.
I've never done it. I've just heard it off a few people.
So Heartbreak Hills, they call them. And so it was just continuously undulating. And at mile 10, we went up this like little bridge, like Hunt Bridge, and I just thought to myself, I'm missing my chance at the PB that I want. I could probably still run around my PB that I've currently got, but I'm not going to be happy with that because I'm here to try and run 63 minutes sort of thing. I'm going to run about 65 or so. I thought, if I try and push for that though as well, I'm going to tie my legs out for Manchester in 4 weeks' time. It's going to take too much out of me that I'm going to need a week's rest, recovery from this, and that's missing a week of training. So I just backed off and soaked up the atmosphere, and it was, those last couple miles into the finish were fantastic. The atmosphere was great round there. I high-fived a couple of the St Helens runners that I know nearly tripped myself up going through an underpass as they were slightly above me on the level going out the other way, and as I tried to high-five them and stuff. But yeah, just enjoyed it and soaked in the atmosphere, which is great. And when I told my coach about it and stuff like that, he said, you know what? He said, that's a cracking time on that for someone who's going to run a flat marathon course in 4 weeks' time.
It's good that you had that brain, that sort of wherewithal to know that, put ego to one side a little bit. The bigger picture is Manchester and what you want to achieve there. So it's quite good that sort of shows. I mean, in boxing you call it ring IQ. I don't know what running terminology you have for it, but it's good that you kind of knew, but you had a presence of mind of where you was at that time. So, but yeah, still an incredible time, and it's always good when you get to soak in the atmosphere. So talk me through. We're here now. We've arrived at Manchester. You're on race day. Do you do any sort of pre-match sort of meals or anything? So weird rituals you do before you go out there?
Yeah. So this is the one that everyone laughs at me about. To be fair, the runners laugh at me about. So my pre-race the night before meal. So I start from fueling wise, I'll start from Tuesday. Of the week, with the race being a Sunday, I'll have pasta for every evening meal from Tuesday onwards, apart from the night before the race. Because for me, by the time you hit the night before the race, you've done the fueling, it's all there. If you've not done it right, then whatever you have the night before isn't going to benefit you. The only thing the night before is going to happen is it's potentially going to upset your stomach on race day if you have something that's odd or different or whatever. So what I tend to do is I have a McDonald's because, and there is logic to it. I know it sounds mad, but basically, wherever you go in the world, you can get a McDonald's, and a McDonald's is a McDonald's no matter where, sort of thing. So if you always have like a favourite pasta dish or a favourite, you might not be able to get it, and so that it does become there is a lot of superstition in any sport, boxing to running stuff like that, and you get these superstitions, and so if you have a meal that isn't easily accessible, then it starts to play a little bit on your mind if you can't get hold of that. So I know with a McDonald's I can always have it. Plus, I've made sure the fueling's in beforehand, so that McDonald's, one, isn't going to upset my stomach, and two, I can always get hold of it. And then what I also have is a beer, so you got a lager, so usually either a Budweiser, so a light beer to be fair. And there's not much sort of real reasoning behind that, apart from the fact that it just feels very casual. Along with the McDonald's, it feels really casual because, when you've built up for a big race, the nerves are already there. You're already thinking, I've got to go up in the morning at this time, I've got to do this, got to make sure me numbers on my vest and all the rest of it. So I think if you then also weighing out your pasta and doing all this sort of thing, you just add in more to that nervous energy, and that energy takes away from the race the next day because it's costing you, expending it. And so a beer at a McDonald's, just chill.
Do you know what? I never thought that would be sort of like, for all the stuff you achieved in running, a Mackey's and a beer. That's all you need the night before. I wish I'd known that. I was trying to find my favourite pasta place. No, that's awesome, mate. That's so. What do you get from McDonald's afterwards?
So I used to get a Big Mac, portion of fries, some chicken nuggets, and one of the little cookies.
Okay.
Because I love desserts, so I have to have some sort of dessert, and the cookies.
So it's quite a standard Mac.
Yeah, it's nothing special.
If you want, we know everyone's got a Big Mac, don't they? So,
and chicken nuggets
because they might have their own variation of burgers. Okay, brilliant. So you've had your McDonald's sort of thing. Do you have anything on the morning of the event? I sometimes have like bagels, sort of jam bagels.
So I tend to have 2 slices of white toast with some butter and jam on. That's about it. And then went to Manchester. Obviously went from home, drove up to Manchester, parked sort of somewhere between the Trafford Centre and on the industrial estates around there, and there's a nice little parking spot that we found work, so parked up there. It's probably about 10-15 minute walk towards the start. anyway, they sort of said that the elite runners were meeting up at this point, and I was like, no chance they're meeting there, because it was like 2 hours before the race they wanted us to meet at this point. I was like, no way the elite runners are getting to that point at this time. Just not happening. Like I know from races, we're like the elite runners tend to be the last runners there. Everyone else will have got there, and the elite runners will just stroll up from some side point or something like that and just rock up, and just because the number will be, say, elite on it or whatever like that, and they'll just come in and go, yeah, that's me there, and just stroll in. So they're never there. So I was like, right, well, I'm not going there that early, but I got there and I thought, well, I'll just go to the point and just check, I always like to make sure the race is starting when it said it's meant to start, and I've got everything, so I want to go check it on the day with the officials and stuff like that. So I went to this point that the elite runners were meant to meet up, and I said, yeah, I'm in the elite race, go do this. And he went, oh, the elite runners are gone, they've gone. I was like, no, they've not. I said, the race doesn't start till then, they're not gone yet. Like, oh yeah, they went down there like an hour ago, and I was like, what, no, nah. So there was all still COVID protocols, there was waves going out, everyone was like queuing up. So I was like, oh God, Mum, I'm gonna have to like give you me stuff now and just leg it down there, and get there. There's still like an hour to go before the start of the race, and because you couldn't get family members and stuff, weren't allowed at the start, or they weren't meant to be allowed. So I stripped down to my race vest, put my race shoes on, into my shorts, everything, and just started like weaving my way through these crowds and stuff like that, and flashing me number to the officials to get through all the barriers that were up to stop anyone going that wasn't meant to go yet. And got to the start line, and like there's no one around really apart from some officials and stuff like that. And I say, oh, where's the elite runners? I've been told, and they won't come here for another another hour or so. And I'm like, oh yeah. And so I'm there, and I'm like, oh great. So I'm like, I've not got any kit or anything. It's it's October, so it's a little cool. The summer's out, but it's a little cool. Actually, the race was later in the day because they'd had the half marathon as well that day, because the half marathon would usually be in October. So that had run first, and then the marathon was a bit later in the day. So I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now? So I'm just trying to stay warm, really. And then my mum walks up, and she's just walked through, no problem whatsoever, come up, and I was like, oh, okay, put my coat back on and everything like that and stay warm. So yeah, we've got there's, again, the luxuries of being one of the elite runners is there's a private toilet space and stuff like that set to one side and things. So you don't have to queue up and get in the 1,000 people queues that gather on the big race day sort of thing, like Manchester and stuff and London. So I'm just sort of mulling around this area and nipping the loo and things, and trying to not stress too much and use up all the energy. And yeah, one of the lads who was at the Great North Run, who had a fantastic run, to be fair, at the Great North Run, and beat me in a 5k race I'd done during the training block. He rocked up, and he wasn't on the start list, and I was like, oh, okay, he's my competitor. Runs for Salford, Dave, and I was like, right, okay, he's probably the one to watch then. And so yeah, we were on the start line, and then it got delayed. There was some issue somewhere, and I think it was about half an hour delay on it. Basically, as they took us to the start line, they said, we're going to be delayed, and we sort of mulling around waiting, and you're getting cold again and trying to warm up and things. And finally the gun goes, and we're off, and Dave goes off pretty quick, to be fair. And it's a downhill start, and I'm thinking, I'm not letting him get a gap on me yet, so I run with him. So me and him are together running off, and we go through the first mile, and the lead car's ahead of us, and the clock's on it, and it says 4:40. Now I knew the pace I sort of wanted to run at was around, I wanted to try and run 2:14 pace, which would be, again, as I say, the Commonwealth Games qualifying standard, so it's about 5:07, 5:08 a mile. So yeah, the lead car says 4:40 on it. So I go, Dave, I said, we're running a full marathon here, not a half, like. And he looks and he goes, ooh. And he just drops off then. And I think, you know what, I feel all right, like. So I just carry on, like. So I slow to
tactical sort of maneuver.
So I slow to about 4:50, but I'm still feeling good. And I'm like, it feels all right. And then another lad catches me up. So I'm running with him. And Dave's not far behind us, but he's just a little bit, he's dropped off the pace a little bit, slow in it. And yeah, we go through 5k in about 15 minutes. Again, realistically for 2:14 is around 16-minute 5k pace, so I know we're well ahead bagging time here, but I'm like, this feels great. I just keep going, and just as we go through into I'm trying to drop the pace a little bit and ease it back to 5:08 as we head into Manchester City Centre, which was new for that year on the course, and we sort of go in, and the crowds, it's just like a wall of sound, and it's what I imagine sort of London must feel like, and things like that in areas, and or at the time it's what I imagined London must feel like, and I found myself getting emotional. I was like, God, I'm only 5k in here, like, dial this back a little bit here, I'm starting to like feel like tears welling up in this emotion that's running through the crowds, and I'm in like my St Helens kit and people are shouting St Helens, the day before Saints had won the championships, the day before actually in Manchester, so like I saw like Lindsay Prescott and stuff like that were out on the course and things, from obviously having stayed in Manchester and stuff. So that was mad seeing them out there and people. But so I'm leading it with this lad, and we're coming out of Manchester, and the pace picked up with those crowds buzzing as well. I'd lifted the pace, and I think I threw a wave out to the crowd or something like that, which is a bit of a dramatic thing to do 4 miles into a marathon. That might have come back to bite me if it hadn't gone as well as it had. But sort of we're getting towards 10k, coming back up the bypass to the point where the start line is, and we're going to see my mum and my girlfriend and stuff that are all going to be waiting there. I think I had gloves on. I chucked it to him, and I turned to the lad, and I just sort of said, "Oh, what time are you looking to run like?" And he said, "Oh, about 2:14." I said, "Oh," I said, well, "Me too." I said, "But we're running about 2:08 pace at the moment, so we're going to smash it like." And he disappeared off then. And so I was like, oh, okay.
Bit of a trend.
I'm on my own here, like. So it's like 10k into this marathon. I'm solo. I'm at the front. The guys have dropped off behind me, and I'm just running it, and I'm still feeling good. And I go through halfway in about 66 minutes. So yeah, I'm on 2:12 pace at this point. I'm thinking, wow, this still feels really good. But then fear sets in, and I'm like, wow, this feels really good, but I am on for 2:12 pace. I've never been at this point in a marathon before, and I'm leading it, and I have no idea where anybody else is behind me, like who's coming through, what's going on behind. I have got no knowledge of it, and I'm aware that like I've seen lads that I know spectating on the course, and I'm aware like people are probably going like, oh, what is he doing? Like, because like I say, I'm known for going off quick in races from 5Ks and 10Ks, but this is a marathon, and you don't. This is not how you run a marathon. It's not the sensible way to run a marathon. So I start panicking a little bit, to be fair, and I think I don't know what's coming. Like, I've never been to this point in a race at this sort of speed and pace with so much left still to go. So I just back off a little bit. Or a reasonable bit. I probably dropped back to sort of running 5:20s, 5:30 sort of miles in there. Some of the hillier miles, and mile 16 actually in Manchester, you hit quite a sharp hill. It comes out of nowhere, and I studied all the elevation charts and stuff and didn't expect this hill. I think it's basically you're going up round a multi-storey car park, and you just do a little loop in Altrincham, and you turn back, and then you're starting to head back towards the finish. But it caught me off guard a little bit. But it also, as I came round it and got back into Altrincham, I started to be able to see where other runners were, and I didn't know whether there was anyone in the gap between me going round there or not. But I could see where some people were and things, and yeah, running back through Trafford, a cyclist came past me, and I just shouted to him. I said, how far is the next guy? I went, oh, you're clear. So I was like, okay, let's just relax. And in my head then, it was like, right, well, I'm still on for sub 2:20. 2:14's gone now. I've slowed down too much. But yeah, I'm still on for sub 2:20. We're still running well. Let's wait till we get to 5k to go, and then we'll crack. Yeah. Anyway, 5k came, and I went, no, let's just wait for 2 miles to go before we really pick up. I got to 2 miles. I went, no, let's just wait till a mile to go. And basically, I turned the bend, and you see the finish line, and that was the only time I decided, right, okay, let's go. And the stadium announcer comes on, and for some reason funnily enough, there's another Matthew Crean in Australia who's an ultra runner, and he's a really good ultra runner. And during COVID, actually, he'd won a big ultra race out in Australia, and Good Morning Australia had messaged me on Facebook saying like, oh, would I come on the show and stuff like that. And I said, well, I think you've got the wrong Matthew Crean here. Like I'm in St Helens, like, and
should have just done it.
I know. But the announcer though in Manchester then goes, oh, Matthew Crean from Australia is coming into the finish now to win our race. Runs for St Helens, and I'm like everyone, like my mum and my girlfriend are like, from Australia, like where they got this from? And I think they correct themselves. Oh no, he doesn't correct himself until afterwards. After across the line, he's interviewing me and he's like, oh, yeah, Australia. I was like, no, I'm from St Helens, but yeah. So coming down that home straight was fantastic though. The crowds were massive, and I was like waving to him, and I knew there was no one behind, and I knew I was well under 220, and 280. I could see 218 on it. I was just sprinting like mad down the home straight to try and get as close to 218 as possible, and waving to the crowds, and I think it just about fixed me here to one side and stuff like that as across the line and stuff for the photos and things. But it was great.
No, well, it was a phenomenal sight because obviously on the videos we've seen. You don't. It's not just a case of you running to the finish line. There's literally no one in shot behind you for and even when you've crossed over the line,
there's two minutes ahead. I think.
Is that what it was? Because on the video I seen, it just looked like you'd literally left everyone for dust crossing the line. So what was that like when obviously you've just come to the home stretch? You can see the finish line. Presumably there's that big ribbon because no one's going over it. Is that how it is? So I wouldn't know. But so a big ribbon. So when you've seen that, what's going on for your head? The crowd, like it's great for like me just getting to the finish line and running alongside people. But the fact you're on that home stretch on your own. Talk us through the feelings that are going on through your head.
Yeah, so it's just like. I mean, you're just like, to be fair, like you can't really remember it. It's like you're just that much buzzing of atmosphere, and the crowds are, they're just told the winner's coming through, so they're just thinking, oh, like who's this like running? The clock says 218, and I mean, for me, 218. When I look at what I want to do and what I want to achieve, and what would put me at the top of the UK rankings, and what would put me, competitively, in the world sort of thing, it doesn't come anywhere close. You know what I mean? Like you're talking. I've got to run 10 minutes quicker to be anywhere in the to be at the top of the UK, and then you nearly 20 minutes quicker. Obviously a bit slower than that, but to be competitive in the top in the world sort of thing. So. But that all goes out. And to be fair, funnily enough, my mum was with my girlfriend, and she was like, "Oh, he's going to be unhappy. He's not going to be happy with that sort of thing and stuff." And I think my girlfriend's like, "What are you on about? Like he's won it. He's won the marathon." And I was like, "Oh yeah, but he won it quicker than that." And I think my mum, one is it takes her thing of like she would have been disappointed with her time if she'd set a faster goal time and she didn't hit it. She'd be disappointed with it. But also she witnessed me growing up in running, and until I was probably till I returned to running after 25 and a couple of years into that, there were I was a bit of a drama queen when I raced and didn't run well, and whether it was even if I won but didn't run the time I wanted, it was like number was ripped off the vest and thrown to our side. It was rubbish, and storming off sort of thing. And I think she still sees that when I race and don't run well, like she thinks, oh, that's what he's gonna be there. But I grew up and matured from that, and like you said, when I did the Great North Run, knowing that I need to back off here and stuff. I wanted to go quicker, but that was the hunger and the fuel for the next race sort of thing. But it was to soak in that atmosphere, crossing the line at pretty much a home marathon, being down the road in Manchester and things, was just unbelievable, and to run under 220, which is what I wanted, to win it, to know there was a nice $2,500 payday coming off the back of it, which is bonus. It wasn't don't race it for it. That's it. But and just to hit that goal that I'd written, sort of 14 weeks earlier in my little diary, like win Manchester Marathon, which just to realise that and achieve it was
because you ticked a lot of boxes that day, didn't you? Because obviously you got under. I know it wasn't the time that you wanted, but you certainly got on. You got under the time that you wanted from the previous marathon that you'd ran. You'd also you'd won the thing, and then obviously you get yourself a nice little payday for it as well. Yeah. So moving on from Manchester, 2 weeks later. You don't really give yourself much time there. you end up signing up and doing it all again in the Liverpool one.
Yeah.
So am I right in, because obviously I've binge watched a few sort of podcasts that you put out, am I right in thinking that you wasn't planning to do Liverpool? Talk us through that, how that came about.
So Manchester as well was my 30th birthday. So I turned 30 on Manchester, so it was a nice birthday present to myself.
Love it sick as well.
Sick. And so funnily enough, we had to rush back because we had the Turks in St Helens booked, the upstairs booked for a big sort of party and meal with family and friends and things like that. And we booked it relatively, early enough on, sort of thing. Some of the lads from Liverpool I know and stuff were coming over and things, and family were coming over. So we had to rush. We got the medal and got the thing, and then we're like sort of driving home quick and grabbing a quick shower and stuff like that. And so I think everyone bought me drinks and stuff like that night. So don't remember much of it past a certain point. And then the next morning I was going camping with my girlfriend for the week, as that was our recovery from a marathon was going to be camping. So we went up to the lakes and we had a nice week for October. Actually, it was really pleasant, to be fair. So camped for a week. I went for my first run on the Friday. We did a nice little 10k on the trails together. I didn't feel too bad, to be fair. And then she was doing the Liverpool rock and roll half marathon. She was entered into that. Her mum was doing the Liverpool marathon, the rock and roll marathon, and a load of the mates and stuff like that were all going there, and the club and stuff that she runs for, Kirby Mileage, were all going there. So I was just going to go and support, to be fair. But she started saying, "Oh, why don't you run it? Why don't you run it? You'll win it." And as the week progressed, then after the camping trip. 1 week out to Liverpool, I was looking at like previous times people had run there, and on its current iteration as the rock and roll marathon, no one had run under 2 hours 30 on it. And I thought, well, yeah, even if I run, a little bit slower and take the pace off and stuff like that, I stand a good chance of winning it. And obviously, being that it was more local to St Helens, a lot of the local clubs from St Helens and local runners were all going to go and do Liverpool, and so it was, obviously I'd done my goal was Manchester and things, so it was a nice little bit where, I can sort of promote the shop a little bit and do a little bit of promotion as well as, try and win another marathon sort of thing. And so, it started to creep into my head, and I thought, right, okay, well, there's a couple of people here I've got to convince that this is a good idea. One was my mum, who, when I first said it, she was like, "That's just stupid. What are you thinking?" Because doing 2 marathons back to back, it's sort of the elite level sort of thing. You just don't do it. Yeah. It's 2 marathons a year pretty much is what you do, and that's it. And Kipchoge doesn't really race anything. He's the world record holder for the marathon and things like that. He does 2 marathons and that's it. There's no other races in between. Everything is focused on those marathons. But I love racing and I love being out there and stuff. So I was like, well, as long as my body seems okay, let's do it. So I went to the track on the Thursday night, and my cousin Dave Hunter was there, who's again local businessman, Paramount Digital and stuff like that. So he was there with his daughter Sophia, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing, Matt?" And I said, "Well, I'm just seeing whether or not my legs are all right for Liverpool marathon. I might have a crack at it." So I planned to do a couple 400s. I stepped on the track. I did 1 400 in 60 seconds, and I thought, yeah, my legs are fine. That's it. So yeah, the next day, Friday, went to Liverpool. Went to the expo and signed myself up for the marathon, which was quite painful because I had not paid to enter a race for quite a long time, and it was the full pelt of 65 quid, which I'm not used to paying me because they usually just give me a number. So that was interesting, and then so I was entered then. I was doing the marathon. Obviously I had to convince my coach as well. Which, Rory is an elite runner. I said to him, look, I'm thinking doing the Liverpool marathon. He said, no. He said, not a chance. I said, well, look, I'll take it easy. I said, look, I own a running shop in St Helens. A lot of the local club runners are going to be there. Local runners, people are going to be there. It's good for the business and things like that. And He said, all right, okay, I get why you're going to do it, because he's a sponsored athlete. He's sponsored by Puma. He was sponsored by Hoka at the time. He gets dictated by the brand sometimes for him to go and run somewhere. So he got it once I sort of said that. So okay, he said, because I said it's never been won in under 230 in its current iteration. And he said, all right. He said, well, just run under 230 then. Just do enough to win. That's all you need to do. So I said, yeah, that's all I'll do. He's like, no 440 miles to start off with, none of that, just enough to win. I said, yeah, that's what I'll do. So we go the start on the start line, and gun goes, and basically you start on the docks, and you come off and you turn on the sort of the city side of the docks rather than the water side, and you probably about 300 meters in. There's a tight right turn round, and then you head up and onto the main road, the A road at the front there in Liverpool, and there's photos of me at that turn, on that first right turn, and I'm on my own. No one's with me because I've shot off like a bat out of hell down here.
What you said you weren't going to do.
What I wasn't going to do. And the first mile ends up being about 4:45. And we even went wrong slightly because the lead motorbikes didn't know where they were going. And so the lead cyclist knew me. And actually I've now worked with him as Prime Triathlon coach, and he's the head coach there. Who I coach for and helped coach with and coach at. And he was the lead bike, so he was like, Matt, let's just keep going. We'll find our way back onto the course. So we had a slight diversion round and then jumped back onto the course, and so we added a bit extra there in the first mile, and then we're back on the course. And I mean, Liverpool was such a different race to Manchester in that, one, I was on my own from the word go. I was solo, but it's a lot tougher of a course. Like you're up the hills up towards the... I was going to
say it's vastly different than Manchester, which is just a flat sprint.
And the other one with Manchester is it's always changing. It's you're going different streets. You've got to, it keeps you focused. Whereas Liverpool, you run up to Everton and Anfield, and like. You run through the stadiums and stuff like that, and then you run back and you run past people, and it was great. Like I was at that point, I was running about 5:08 mile pace. I was running that 2:14 sort of pace, similar pace I ran at Manchester in the early miles. But I was like high fiving because I knew loads of people, so I was like high fiving people, and I knew there was no one with me, and I was like, this is this is in the bag sort of thing, and it was towards the end it nearly wasn't, but. Like high-fiving people, shouting, cheering everyone on and stuff like that. And the guy who was on the lead bike, as I say, he knew me and he knew what I did in Manchester. And his mate Ian Lawton had been on my podcast that I do with my mate John Joe a couple of weeks earlier and stuff. And so he was like, this is mad, Matt. You're mad. Like, and we were having a good laugh. And and then you head back into the city, and then you head towards Princess Park and onto sort of Sefton Park. And by the time you got to there, it'd gone through halfway, and I was still on for around 2:19 pace. I thought, this should be quite impressive, this to back-to-back sub 220s. But it was paper cups, water cups, and I hadn't had a drink at all. Every time I grabbed them, I just crushed them, and water just went, and I just couldn't work out how to drink out of these paper cups. Round probably mile 16, I just started to feeling a little low on energy, a little bit of cramps sort of starting to appear in, and I was like, this is not good. And at 20 miles you go down Penny Lane, and you U-turn, and so I did the U-turn, and I looked at my watch, and I clocked the watch, and I was like, okay, I'm going to see the next runner now, and I've just, whatever I see, I'm double the time, and that's my gap. So I had 2.5 minutes from me U-turning to where I saw them. So right, okay, I've got a 5-minute lead. We're at 20 miles, 5 minutes lead, 6.2 miles to go. Okay, let's just, it should just be enough. But this runner, I'd seen him on the start line, and he had a Kent AC vest on. I thought, he's travelled up for this. Like, I wonder, he must be reasonable, like, to travel up for this. So we hit down on the front then, and it sort of hits the cobbles on the front, and I was struggling. Cramp was coming bad. My hamstring cramped up bad. I had to stop and 23 miles in, stop and stretch my hamstring out and just try and just get me going. Luckily, the wind was behind me and not in front of me, which usually you're unlucky on that stretch, and it's in your face all the way, because it's all the way down the docks then to the finish. But I had to stretch it off, and the photos for the finish line of Liverpool Marathon were nowhere near as good as Manchester, because I think the F word pretty much was readable from my lips as I crossed the line.
Good publicity for the store, I'm sure.
I managed to hold it. He closed me to 2 minutes by the end. I ran 2:26. So at that point was my slowest marathon.
But I still
won it, and I was happy. The goal was just to do it and stuff. So I was really happy with it. It was nice to take the win. It was a very painful way of racing and stuff like that.
But in all fairness to you, you had ran Manchester 2 weeks ago. Now I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty certain that's the last rock and roll Liverpool marathon.
Yeah, that was the reason for doing it as well, because it was the last one.
So you knew it was going to be the last one?
Yeah.
So straight away, as it stands now, there is no Liverpool marathon, is there? So you're the last winner of the Liverpool marathon. So that's obviously a good little another tick on the CV, I suppose, a bit of bragging rights. Okay, so we've established you're quite a good runner in all aspects, but certainly we'll bring it back down to sort of like our hometown, St Helens. And another thing that you always win is the annual St Helens 10K. Which of course it's more of a community type run now, isn't it, rather than sort of people don't generally go to pick up PBs or anything like that. Plus it is quite a tough course as well. You're quite heavily involved with it now in terms of sort of like the promotion. I know you do a fair bit with sort of like the Steve Prescott Foundation, what have you. So do you want to just talk us through, we'll touch on sort of like some achievements on the run itself, but talk us through sort of like your connection with that event.
Yeah, so as with the shop and stuff like that, we sponsor it. We sponsor the prizes and things, really. So that's our main involvement. And I've through COVID and stuff like that, obviously Steve Prescott Foundation couldn't do sort of the runs and do a lot of the charitable work that they wanted to do. So I got involved with a couple of the challenges they were taking on. Taylor Prescott did his, I think it was 260 odd miles, 280 odd miles.
Is that what he just did, like the ultras round Ruskin? Oh my god!
Yeah, I
fair play to him, but that would blow my mind trying to do that.
Yeah, well, when him and Martin Blundell came and spoke to me and said that Taylor was doing that, and would I sort him out with some shoes and give him some advice and stuff like that. I said, well, I've never done an ultra, so I can advise so much. But and at that point, I hadn't done a marathon either, so it was I'd done it in training, but that was about it. And so I was like, I can advise as much as I can and bits and pieces on nutrition, but you're starting to run into a realm that I don't really know about in the running world. But obviously, we sorted him out with some shoes that were going to suit him and stuff for it. And he, on ones he liked as well. He took a pair of On shoes, and I actually got On then to donate another pair for him, so he could swap out of them, so he wasn't just hammering one pair of shoes for every day. I said to him, you want to pick interesting routes, stuff that will keep you going, because the challenge with doing that is it's going to be it's the mental challenge of it, sort of thing. But then I think Martin and stuff like that realised that it would be great to be able to spectate and support and stuff like that, and get other runners to join him by doing it at Ruskin. And I thought, that is going to be such hard work. I should
point out for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with Ruskin, it's essentially a cricket pitch, isn't it? That he was just running around in a circle. I think it's something like, I could be totally wrong.
It's just over 400 metres. So Ruskin used to be, they used to have a running track there, used to be a cinder track. So Pilks used to train there, and Pilks running team used to be there. And actually it was used in Chariots of Fire, in the film Chariots of Fire. It's used as the Americans' training base when they're training for the Olympics. It's meant to be in Paris, but it's Ruskin Drive. It was on the old cinder track and stuff like that, which you can still see the slight outline on around the football. It's where the football pitches are, so you can just sort of see where this track used to be, just running around the outside of it. It's had its history as a running mecca for the town, for St Helens, in the past as well. And yeah, so when he was there, I was like, oh, that's going to be so tough mentally. But it was a fantastic achievement when he did it, and obviously he had the people came out and supported him from all over, and it was good. And yeah, I ran with him. I think on the first day and then the last day, I ran with him as well. So. Yeah, it was good.
What I often, I mean, we kind of get a lot of critique our town for certain aspects we touched on earlier about it being a bit deprived now. But one thing I've found on any of the charity stuff I've done, I mean, I've not done anything to that scale. I did a 10k a day in 2021 in January, and I had different people. There really is that we've got such a strong community where people come out, because I mean, I was having people run with me who they don't run, they've never ran 10k before, and you're running that with them, albeit at a very slow pace. So I suppose where I'm getting to with this is with the St Helens 10k, it's good that all those communities can come together on this one event.
It's one of the great things about, I mean, as a town, I mean, yeah, like you say, you read like the People of St Helens page and stuff like that, and it's always people are just like, there's nothing in town and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, we've got a nice running shop here if anyone wants to buy running shoes, you know what I mean? Like there's loads of great independent stores, to be fair, around, and I think, because we've maybe not got some of the big well-known brands and stuff like that anymore. They've gone out and we have got quite a lot of them. They just take themselves to the retail parks and stuff like that, so they're not in the town centre. But from an independent standpoint, there's a lot of great independents, and the stuff that they offer is quite niche sort of stuff, so they tend to stand the test of time and stuff like that. So I think there is stuff there, but as a town, we're a sporting town. Obviously Saints as being the big thing, and obviously now world champions and stuff like that.
We smashing everything
darts and things like that as well, aren't we? So, but from a running perspective, St Helens Sutton AC used to be called Sutton Harriers. They changed the name when they merged with St Helens AC back in the late 80s, early 90s. And Sutton Harriers is one of the oldest running clubs in the country. It was founded in I'm going to get this wrong now, and someone from Sutton is going to go, God, the chairman doesn't even know the date, but it's 1893, I want to say. So it's one of the oldest clubs in the country. It's had a huge legacy. They won the national cross country. Back in the day, and the national cross country is probably the biggest national race in the UK on a club level perspective. Like it actually was last weekend, and if you ever want to see athletics at its purest, that's the race to go and watch, because you get basically, especially the senior men's races, you get probably 3,000, 4,000 runners in it, and they're all club athletes. So They go from like the club athletes, some of them are like in their 80s because they've run every single national for like the last 50 years or something like that. But like the ground shakes. Like it's like a stampede of horses when the senior men's race sets off. Like you can be spectating it and the ground shakes because there's so many of them and they go off at speed. Like there's no other race in the country like it. So yeah, Sutton Harriers won that on multiple occasions back in like the 50s, and they were because they won it. They then went on to represent the UK out in a cross country race out in Paris and things like that. And they had a whole bus, like tour bus sort of thing with the club, the athletes, the 6 members of the team on top of the bus, like as if like they won the World Cup or something like that. Like going through the town, it was paraded through the town and stuff like that. And this was back in the 50s and things, and so it's got this real running history to it. But yeah, coming on back to the 10k, for me, running is that sort of sport that it's a level playing field. You can be a millionaire, you can be unemployed and you're trying to find a job and things like that. And when it comes to running, the guy who hasn't got the job and stuff like that might be the better runner than the millionaire. They're looking to them for advice and how do you do that? How do you get better? What's your tips and stuff like that? It's such. I mean, sport as a whole is quite an equaliser in a level playing field, but running, typically what you need is a reasonable pair of shoes on your feet, and you get out the door and go. And that's there's not huge. You don't need a team. There's sometimes the things you struggle with a team sort of thing is you got to have a team of mates to play a team sport sort of thing. But running, yeah, it's there's the road, head outside. There's the trails, head outside and run it. And you can run in not some decent pairs of shoes. I've seen them knocking about and stuff like that, but I've seen them when people come in with them sometimes and they're falling off the feet. But you know, that's all you need to be able to run. Is something like that.
I am a massive advocate. It's something that definitely saved my life on more than one occasion. And I just think, like you touched on there, not only you're ticking a lot of boxes back with running, because anyone can do it, like you said, you know, even if you've not got the most fantastic pair of shoes. You're exercising, so you're stimulating the body. You're also outdoors. I find that, you know, especially if you're doing it on a nice. Spring's my favourite season to training, but you're also getting the endorphins from that. And then if you're doing it with a friend, you've got the social elements as well. So it is something that I massively try and plug. And obviously, you don't have to run at the levels you're running at, but certainly you can get out and still enjoy yourself and get fit and get positive at the same time, which is obviously. Going back to the St Helens 10K, why that's such a good thing for everyone.
It's just fantastic. And the thing with it as well is it's so well supported by the town. Yeah. Like, you know, I mean, usually, it's in March, so typically the weather is pretty awful for it. I mean, there has been years where I think we've started with it lashing it down in rain, gale force winds. It's then started snowing in the middle of the run, and by the end the sun's come out, and you're sort of like, what is going on? But like, without, you know, every single year, the town is out, everyone is out spectating. Going up North Road, the crowds are like 3 or 4 people thick. It's just such sort of celebration of the town, like, and people come out and support it no matter what the weather's like. They're there, and it's such a fantastic atmosphere to do. And obviously being, you know, I say obviously, you know, from Wigan originally sort of thing, born like, but you know, I see St Helens as my hometown really, and when I get to come and race the St Helens 10K, it is fantastic, and that atmosphere, and you know, and you see, you know, I get to see all my mates, like, because I get to race, you know, various places in the country and the world and stuff, but I get to I'm running with all my mates and stuff like that that are all various levels of running. You know, and you know, we come out of the park, and I'm like, you get that bit where you're crisscrossing back, and you know, you're seeing everyone going into the park, and you know, you're high-fiving them and stuff like that, and cheering them on as you go up the hill, and you know, it's such a fantastic thing.
I often find, particularly up North Road, where I'm sort of trying to maintain all levels of my faculties. People are shouting, "Oh, I told you!" I haven't got a clue who it is. I'm just concentrating on getting up that hill. So imagine if you're going sort of at speed, you're probably just whapping high fives.
You don't always recognise people or see them and stuff, but it's lovely to have the shouts and stuff, and then you know, and it's lovely just to shout on it, and cheer people. You know, because I mean, that's the thing. It's, you know, I loved about park running in St Helens Park Run. I used to run direct there and things, and you know, with the 10K and things like, and stuff like the Griffin Grind and the St Helens Striders 5-miler and the Dream Trail race that Sutton put on and things like that. These local races is that, you know, it's you know, obviously it's hugely local people that are running there and racing there, and it's a bit of, for me, it's a bit of giving back as well, because like, you know, especially St Helens 10K, it's not an easy course. It is tough, and I mean, everyone says the challenge is North Road, and for me personally, I think it's the park, because the spectators are on North Road, so you get the lift of the crowd.
Plus, you're only like 2 kilometres in.
It's early on. Whereas the park is like, it's like 2 loops. I think you're up the hill 3 times overall in the park, and like, it's quiet. No one's in the park spectating, so like, it's quite lonely, especially for me. Like, I think it gets a little bit more as everyone gets in the park, but when I'm in the park, it's pretty lonely out there. And going up the hill a couple of times, like, you're sort of like, this is tough, this bit. But then you know, you get to sort of celebrate the achievement of doing the 10K from people who've never done a 10K before, and choose to do St Helens as the first one, sort of thing, and then from people who've run, you know, hundreds of 10Ks and stuff like that. You know, it is a tough one, so no matter what, when you've done it, it is a big achievement. And that's the great thing about it, is that I get to celebrate that with, I get to win it. You know, most years, my first year I ever did it, I was runner-up, to be fair. John Ashcroft, who I mentioned earlier on, was the winner. You know, I get to celebrate my win, but then I get to celebrate everyone else's successes of doing it, and it is great fun. And that was that's the great thing about park run and things like that as well. When I used to do that and more often.
I mean, you mentioned that it was my first 10K that I'd done, that I trained for. I've run it 3 times. Once I did it as a rhino, 20 kilogram rhino. That's a story for another time. So how many times? I mean, you mentioned that you come runner up one year. How many times have you ran it now?
So I think I think 2017 was my first year. I was runner-up. So then, won it in 2018, which I think was the year it got delayed to April. So it was ice and snow and stuff. So it got delayed to April. So I won it that year and I broke the course record. And also tore my hip flexor, my adductor and my quad muscle doing that. I was carrying a slight injury going into it. Then won it in 2019 and then in 2020. And then then obviously it wasn't on in 2021 because we were in COVID. And then in 2022 was back to it. So that's 4 years of winning.
Was 2022 the year you did like a half marathon or something? And then still won the race.
So
anyway.
I was marathon. So I was marathon training for Manchester Marathon again because it was back in April. And my run was 2 mile warm up, 8 miles at 6:10 pace, 8 miles at 5:10 pace, 2 mile cool down. So I thought, so I was living at my girlfriend's in West Derby. So I was like, right, I'm going to just run to St Helens because it's 8 miles if I'm running to work. I'm just going to run in. Down the East Lags in. And then obviously I had about like 20 minutes when I got there, sort of broke up my run a little bit, but changed my shoes into my faster race shoes, swapped my vest, my top and stuff into my race vest and things. We got my mum to bring all that for me. And then, just sort of went for me 5:10s and they ended up being a bit quicker, those miles, but sort of made up for having that little 20-minute rest in the middle of it. So obviously it's 10k, so I still had 2 miles to finish of doing that 5:10 pace when I finished the race. So finished the race, got my medal, stuff like that. Did a quick chat with Thing. He said, I'll be back in a sec. Went outside, did another 2 miles, finished that, and then came back and then waited a little while for me to cool down, to be fair. But that was me training for the million, which we'll be doing this year. But
so I should point out, so at the time we were recording this, the 2023 10k is actually this weekend coming up. However, when this goes out, I'm kind of talking to you from the past, but in the future here, the race will be over. Now, you're running this year, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right, so I think it'd be fair to say, congratulations on winning the
St
Helens 10k, mate. You've got to do it now, it's on film. Okay, fantastic. So you've established that you can win marathons. You've won Manchester and Liverpool. It seems like you've only ever come runner-up once for the St Helens 10k. Let's talk about more sort of national sort of levels. So you mentioned, obviously I get all the guests to fill a form out, so you mentioned that you got yourself a international vest to represent England. Do you want to talk us through how that came about, what that entails, and obviously how that made you feel that you're representing your country, a sport that you love and you strive for?
So I mean, as I say, for a couple of years, so we're going back to like 2018 when I went out to Armagh to do the 5k. I wanted to get picked for the England team for that, and sadly didn't get picked for it, but beat a couple of the England runners there. So I was like, I've got to get picked at some point for England. I want to run for England and represent my country and get that international vest. And so, it wasn't until last year in 2022, and that came off the back of my Manchester Marathon win. The guy one of the team managers for the England team was there and witnessed me run it, because they were looking at Manchester to be the trials race for the Commonwealth Games the following April, which it was. So he was actually there on the day and saw me run and liked my aggressive way of running it and racing it and then obviously managing to hold on and take the win. Because most people thought I was going to fall apart, sort of thing, doing it the way I ran it. And so I got picked to run a half marathon out in Spain in Granollers. So it was quite a tough half marathon course, to be fair. It's sort of basically half of it is uphill and half of it is downhill. Annoyingly, I picked up a little knee injury just going into it, and I'd been to my physio and he'd take me up like mad, and we'd taken a couple of days rest, and for a knee injury it wasn't the best course. Or if it had been a flat course, maybe it would have worked better. So I ran 68 minutes, so it was okay enough. Wasn't where I'd like to have been, and a couple of minutes off my PB. To be fair, the rest of the England squad or the rest of the men's England squad, we were all about 3 minutes slower than their PB. So actually, mine was comparative to where I was. Our fastest guy, Ross Millington, was he ran at the Rio Olympics in the 10,000 meters, so he was our big dog on the team sort of thing, and he finished fourth, but he was 3 minutes down on his best, and stuff. So comparatively it was a good enough run considering the injury and where it was, and it gave me that bit of a springboard of, okay, this is where we are going into the following Manchester Marathon in the April sort of thing, which we knew was going to be a tough race, to be fair, but it was fantastic to represent England, to get that call up and achieve that next sort of goal and level that I wanted to sort of do. And I mean, as I say, it spun from Manchester, and even though Manchester wasn't as quick as I wanted to run necessarily, obviously I was happy with the performance and well over the moon with the performance, and winning it. The 2:18 did put me at another level and another stepping stone. That next level now is to try and get to sort of 2:15 sort of area, and that will be another stepping stone along the journey and things. So getting that England vest and that call up was fantastic, and then the experience of going out there and being part of that team and racing there was wonderful, like, and good, and hopefully onto me next one sort of thing.
I mean, there's obviously got to be, because I suppose in any sport, regardless of what it is, I suppose it's great that you're smashing all these PBs and of course winning these marathons, but I think to have the prestige and the honour to represent your country that's another level kind of achievement, that, isn't it? I mean, that's got to be better than sort of most medals or trophies or anything that you can get.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've kind of touched on sort of like the highs of running, and unfortunately there are some lows as well. I mean, you've mentioned a few times about injuries that you've picked up over the years, so a little funny story really. I mean, you mentioned that you never really fancied London. Now, I never really fancied running, if I'm being completely honest with you. I probably not ran more than 5 kilometres, and then my cousin Dave Archer, he just got into running. He was doing a lot of charity stuff for the veterans. He'd done the St Helens 10k. It wasn't particularly fast, but he was just getting into it. And we'd been at a charity event, so I had a few. And I just said, would you ever do a marathon? He said, I'd only ever do London. Now, I hadn't got a clue how it goes, how you go about it. But certainly with London, you either get in through like an elite level, or you can either raise a shit ton of money for charity, or there is a ballot system. And in layman's terms, that ballot system is essentially potluck.
Whether you get
it. Exactly, So we both put it in. As I say, we'd had a few beers, so it was that sort of like a charity function. And I'd forgot all about it. Now, at the time, London was sponsored by Virgin Money. Right. So I'd come home from work. I was working in Widnes at the time. I'd come home, and there was like this big parcel that had been just about fit for my letterbox, and I'm like, what the hell is that? So it's a stressful day at work. I've opened it up, and I've just seen the Virgin logo. I've not seen the Money logo. I thought, well, I'm on Sky. There's obviously trying to sell me something. Anyway, as I continued to rip the box open, it said, congratulations, you're in. So what the hell is this? Bear in mind, when I'd signed up, beer had been drank. So, and I don't run. So that never even... Anyway, as I'm looking, I've seen like Big Ben and like sort of runners, and I thought, it's like the London Marathon or something. So anyway, I've rung Dave, my cousin. I've said, have you got one of these parcels that I've got? He said, what do you mean? So I've FaceTimed him and showed it. He's gone, no, you did. I mean, I didn't get in. I got an email. Didn't even get like a letter or anything. So it was from that moment, it was kind of like, right, well, I'm quite lucky really to get a place. Well, if you call it luck. I was quite lucky to get a place in. So that was kind of my sort of kick up the backside into running. And obviously London, I mean, it was my first one. It always holds a special place in my heart. And you talk about the crowd, I too was getting emotional. And I was probably only plodding along at a very slow, gradual pace. But certainly seeing all the crowd. And I'd never been to London before, so it was my first trip into London. So I suppose why I'm sort of stealing the spotlight a little bit there is, how did you get into? How did that come about for you? What was your way into getting to London? Because you didn't do it for a charity or anything?
No. So so obviously I did Manchester back in April of last year. It was the Commonwealth trials and stuff like that, so I knew the competition was going to be really good there and things, and I ran it the way I ran the Manchester in October. Basically, I went out hard, knowing that there was guys in there that were 2:10 guys and stuff like that. And in my head, the idea was, well, let's try and get enough of a lead through halfway. If I can run through halfway as I did back in October, I should have about a 30-second lead. There also shouldn't be that many other guys going for that sort of thing, because there's only a couple of them that have ever run at that sort of pace before. Annoyingly, the guys caught me up at 10 miles, so they caught me a little bit before I wanted to, and I think possibly because I'd gone out like that, it had made them sort of, because in the end they ended up running quicker than they were planning on running to that point. So I wonder whether or not, a couple of them said, we're going to have to close this gap up a little bit, because it wasn't closing. But they reeled me in at 10 miles, and I made the stupid mistake there of an ego played a part, of not wanting to be passed. So instead of going, okay, my work's done, let's sit in this back of this pack and recover a bit now and hold on, because there was actually more of a group there than it expected to be. Let's just sit in, and they had pacemakers. Let's just sit in there and let them go. I went, no, I'm not losing the lead. So I did basically what 2 miles of what we call fartlek, which is sort of Swedish for speed play, and it's basically just like I just kept, every time they came to sort of swallow me up into the group, I just legged it as hard as I could for a bit, and then eased off, and they swallowed me back up, and I legged it again. The commentators loved it; they were having a right field day, taking the mick out of me doing it, there was I think a lot of people counted me out then after that. I wasn't going to even finish the race, to be fair. But I came away with a 10-second PB, another 2:18. A lot further down the field than I've been in October. I think I finished 18th rather than first. But it was another stepping stone. It was another PB, and it was another learning experience and curve. And we tried something and it failed, and that was that's where you learn from. So it then came, okay, well, what do we look at next? And London was still in October. It hadn't gone back to April yet. It's just why Manchester was the trials and things like that. And I thought, well, I don't really want to do. London's not the one I've wanted to do. And in my head, if I was going to do one of the majors, it wasn't the one I was going to look at. But if I'm going to train for a marathon, it's probably safer to train for one locally than it is to train for one abroad, sort of thing, especially Boston or New York. And obviously the only one at the other half of the year is New York in November. And actually, I'd actually requested to get into New York in the elite field and got told I was too slow. So I needed to run that sort of 2:15 sort of time that I mentioned is the next level is where I need to get to, was what they told me I needed to run for it. And obviously, having not done that in the Manchester in the April was then, was okay, well, what do we look at? So I emailed the elite organisers for London and said, can I get a place in the field and stuff like that? And I made the cut-off window and things for that. So I was in the elite race. So you get the elite hotel and things, and which weirdly enough it used to be at Tower Bridge, which would be quite nice. It would be relatively central for the finish and too far from the start. Weirdly enough, it's out in Windsor now, so it's actually miles away from either. And I'm quick enough to make the elite field, but I'm not quick enough to get the full treatment in it. So I only had the one night in the elite hotel. So we went down, and my girlfriend's cousin put us up in her house for or her apartment for a night, and then we went to the elite hotel in Windsor the next day. Sort of mull around there for a little bit, and then obviously the next morning I had to sort of check out and head to the race. So yeah, it was like I think it was like a 4 a.m. get up to get on this coach from Windsor with the other elite athletes and things like that, and the technical briefing and discuss sort of what the paces were going to do and which pace groups there would be, and so you could sort of get an idea of who you wanted to run with and stuff. And there was a group that was meant to be pacing 5:08, 5:07, which is again that 2:14 window. So I thought, yeah, that's what I'll go with. And so yeah, we get on this coach and head out to the start, and there's a big tent there, the elite athlete tent, and we've all got a chair and a little roll mat for us to pick and take as our spot. So we're there like 2 hours before the start. So I put my bag down as a pillow. I just fall asleep, set me alarm for an hour's time, and just go to sleep for an hour. To be fair, on this little roll mat in this tent, and then wake up, go out and start my warm up and things like that for the race. Little mile on this little closed off loop, and we can see all the other mass runners and stuff like that getting ready and starting to queue up and things like that. And we do this little warm up and stuff and nip to the loos and then get taken out, and I've had to have like my shoes were had to be inspected and stuff like that to make sure they match the new guide rules that you have to have, you can't be higher than 40mm stack height on your race shoes and stuff like that. So they were all measured up and things like that the day before and stuff. And yeah, which I made a mistake on really. I had there was 3 shoes I was choosing between. One was one I'd been sent as a sample to review. One was the Alpha Fly, which I'd previously raced in, and one was the new Alpha Fly, which Kipchoge a week earlier had taken 30 seconds off his own world record in. Which I hadn't really, I tried a couple of times and didn't really like when I tried it on, so I was a bit hesitant about it. The shoe I'd been sent to sample, I really quite liked, but I didn't know whether or not it hit the 40mm stack height rule or not. And so I made the call of not taking that with me, because if I chose to wear that shoe and then hand it in for inspection, they said I couldn't wear it. That'd be that. So it was between Alpha Fly version 2 and Alpha Fly version 1. And it was a new version of Alpha Fly 1 that I had. And a couple of runs I'd done in it, I wasn't convinced. It didn't feel the same as my other ones, and I was a bit worried. So hand them in for inspection, said, can I hand both in and choose on the day? And they went, no, you've got to make your decision now. So this is the day before the race, and I'm like, which shoe do I want? And they ended up going with the Alpha Fly 2, and in the end, I pretty much hated them. They weren't for me, and I've tried wearing them since, and I've still hated them. So yeah, it was a bad choice there. So I think from the start, really, in London, it was going wrong from me, from my shoe choice. But I was on the start line, on the TV, the St Helens Sutton vest with there and things like that, with the crowds and everything, and got to see a couple of people that I knew who were in the mass sort of start that were coming out, and sort of high-fiving them and stuff before we went to the start line, and then pulled to the start line with the rest of the elite runners, and knew that the guy who our pacemaker was, who I was looking for, and that was try and get into that group, and which again was a different way for me to run. I would usually go out hard and run my own race, and I thought, well, I've done that plenty of times, and we've only run 2:18. Let's try and run this controlled race that everyone had sort of said, you've got to run a controlled marathon and do it. I thought, well, you've got to learn. I've got to try it and see if it works. So I did. I went with the pack and went off and settled in behind, and I just felt uncomfortable. Just didn't feel right to be in this pack. I don't have a training group really around me. Now that I've moved to the marathons, when I was in the short stuff I did, but now with the marathon I don't, and I just felt uncomfortable running in a group and running around. We got like a mile in, and the pace was like a second or two slower than we were meant to be running at, and there was a group just ahead who I knew were running. They were trying to aim for about I think we were actually going like 2:15, 2:16 pace, and they were running like 2:14, or maybe just under 2:14. So I thought, I'll try and get in between these two groups. I'll get ahead and try and run between the two, and then I can just sort of keep that, and I can run on my own and just do that, knowing that as long as I'm ahead of them, I'm ahead of 2:16, and as long as I'm behind them, I'm over 2:14. And I did that for about 2 miles, and then the group behind me, obviously they must have got a bit. Some of them said, catching back up sort of thing. So they caught me back up. I could sort of feel them behind, and I looked, and they were like 2 or 3 meters behind. I thought, there's no point in me being 2 or 3 meters ahead. I might as well be in that pack and run with them. So I dropped back into it, and again, I just didn't feel comfortable to do it. I found myself sort of too focused on everybody else, on their breathing and how they seemed and their form, and just worried, I don't feel as easy. I feel like this is hard work, and I'm struggling here and things, and just getting really inside my own head really. And then we headed, as it went on, the groups started to drop off, and I was still with him and still going, and we got to Tower Bridge, which is just about halfway, or just before halfway, and I just started to feel just cramping in me right hamstring, and I was a bit like, oh no, come on, it can't, halfway, it can't be going here. And then I tried to push through it, and it wasn't going, so then I backed off the pace a little bit to try and just sort of, just try and let the leg recover and let it stretch out a little bit without pushing it. And it still wasn't going, and the group, I'd let the group go by this point, and I'm still running around 2:15, 2:16 pace, but I'm hurting and it's struggling a bit, and I thought, well, it's not going from slowing down, so maybe I'll just get back on pace and try and push again. And I did, and then at that point, just felt just a twinge just go, just a couple little fibers just pull, just that little shock of it going. I thought that's it now. And I had another marathon entered in December, 2 months later in California, and I was like, you know what, like we're still before 20 miles. You know, it was going through my head. It took a couple of miles for me to finally give up and say, no, this need to call it a day here. But because they told us as well, if we're in the elite race, if we call it a day between sort of like 28k and 35k, there'll be a car there to pick us up. So a little bit in my head was like, oh, we'll just give up and just go and get this car. Like, and I was like, no, I don't want to wimp out. I don't want to give up. I want to finish it. Yeah. And then I thought, well, I'm just hurting myself now. I'm just risking California, and we booked it as a holiday. The flights were booked. Everything was like, you know, I can stop now. Hopefully, not have done too much damage. I had a physio appointment booked with my physio on the Wednesday coming up, just to shake out really from the marathon. So I was like, well, I can get seen and get it sorted. Let's just call it quits here and save it, and hopefully we can train hard for California. So I did, and I was going out asking for, you know, oh, there's a car for the elite runners. Like, is there any way I could find it? And no one had a clue. None of the marshals seemed to know. The volunteers knew anything about it. So I'm like, all right. So they take me to the St John's ambulance sort of thing, and I'm like, well, there's nothing you can do for me. It's a muscle pull, like, you know, if you massage it, you're just gonna make it worse at this point. Like, we can give you some ice. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take some ice for it. And then the volunteer who'd taken me there said, oh, I'll go and find out about this car for you and stuff like that. So he disappears off, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just in my vest and stuff. Again, it's October. I'm getting cold, like, and I'm sitting here, and half an hour passes. I'm still sort of sat here, like, and I'm like, it's a bit curious. And obviously, I know my mum and my girlfriend and stuff are at the finish, and they're not going to know what's happened. And I mean, when I ran past them, they were just after Tower Bridge, and I did shout. I said my hamstrings are cramping, like it's sore. I'm not feeling good. So obviously at that point, my mum's, I mean, she's a worrier, so she's panicking like mad, and my girlfriend's trying to keep her calm, I think. But they don't know where I am and what's happened to me. And I'm just thinking, I make my own way back. Like, if I had a tube station, I'll just go. So I just start wandering off. I just start walking towards. I asked someone, I said, you know, is the tube station round? He said, yeah, just down there. A couple hundred metres down there's a tube. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll head there then. So I get to the tube station, I limp my way up the steps, and I go, I don't know where I'm going actually. Where do I need to go here? Like, and so I asked one of the guys who works at the tube station. I said, do you know which tube station is for the finish? And he goes, oh, I don't know. I just work at the tube station. I'm like, you'd think you'd know, like, London Marathon's on, you think you know where the finish is, like. So then I limp myself back down the stairs and head back to a volunteer, and this I see this volunteer coming towards me who's slightly different sort of outfit to the ones who were on, like, the race marshals on the side, and he sort of spots me and I spot him, and he's obviously the guy that's been sent to come and get me and take me back. And he said, oh yeah, he said, are you Matt? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, I've been sent to get you. Like, he said, there's no car, like, it's gone. He said, I'll get you on the tube, like, and I'll take you back to the elite athletes tent where my bag and all the rest of it had been taken to from the coach and stuff. So we start on this mad little like tube journey around London, and obviously I'm there and all the people, oh, have you run and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, well, I ran a bit, I had to pull out, and I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry, and everything, you know, because obviously they're all watching or spectating and things, and then get back to the athletes tent, and you know, the physio, there's a physio there, so the organiser, the elite athlete coordinator, he says, go see the physio, and I'm like, there's not much you can do for me at the moment. I said, I'm in with my physio. He said, yeah, you're here, you know. He said, you've got him, he's there, he's free, you know, go see him. So I was like, okay, yeah. So he sees me and he's like, yeah, it's not too bad. You've done it, you know, there's a couple of fibres, I can feel them there, but you know, you'll be all right. A couple of days rest and stuff, you'll be okay. And then he's like, you know, do you do strength and conditioning sort of stuff and things? I'm like, no, not really. It's probably it's my weak area. Not my diet, to be fair, my weak area, and He goes, you need to do some strength and conditioning. He said, you know, you've done the work to get on the elite start line of London. You're like, you're here. You know, he said, all these guys, they've got strength and conditioning programs and stuff like that. He said, you know, you've already done the hard work of getting yourself on the elite start line. He said, now you've got to make your body bulletproof so that you're not getting injured. You're not thinking you're finishing it with these guys. So you know, that has been another you know, a sort of change and thingy from London, and something that I took away from London. And obviously I went on to California and raced California, and that went well. Again, it wasn't as fast as I wanted to run. It was another 2:18, but it was another PB. But it was probably the toughest course that I've run a fast time on. Because the first 20 miles were just rolling hills for 20 miles, and it's a point-to-point course. So you sort of, not knowing the course, I didn't know the route and didn't know when the hills were going to let up and when they were going to stop and let me relax. Or I knew they were going to stop at 20 miles, but I didn't know how hard they were going to be as they went on, and some of them were quite hard. So I ran it sensibly. I ran it my way and my sort of pace, rather than trying to run in that group or anything like that. And it was the first marathon I had where the last 10k I had loads left in me, and I was able to really like run hard, because the last 10k is a nice gentle downhill to the finish. And my coach he'd finished second there the year before, so he'd sort of told me, he said you want to be the first 20 miles, you want to be just in control the whole way, and then you want to let rip when you hit that last 10k. He said, because a lot of guys will go out too hard over the hills and they'll be suffering in that last 10k. So I went from like 80th to 40th in that last 10k, and ran another 280 in the PB, and so yeah, that was really good.
I suppose obviously it sounds London was obviously a bad day at the office for you, but it's good that you've taken somewhat away from it. Do you do a lot of strength and conditioning training now?
Yeah, so I've added that into the programme and things, and that's obviously building that. It was an area I knew I was sort of weak on and things, but it was also an area that I didn't know really where to start with and what to do with it, sort of thing. So, but yeah, he made a valid point to me. It is, I've got to make myself bulletproof, and if I want to race against these guys that I've got myself on the start line to race against, I've got to take the what they're doing and things like that, and that's that is that strength and conditioning, and yeah, me diet's me other sort of standpoint. I've got my recovery right now and my sleep and stuff like that and things which in the past when I was doing short distances, I never really did as well as I am doing now and things. My girlfriend helps with that because she likes to go to bed at like 9 o'clock. She's an early sleeper, whereas I'd happily sit up all night long and watch TV and stuff. So
okay, so I suppose you've achieved some phenomenal feats in this running game with all the stuff we've touched on. So I suppose you've mentioned there that you like to give back. So as we touched on at the start, we're in a different setting today. We're actually made to run St Helens. So do you want to just talk us through how that came about? How did you decide to because am I right in thinking it's yours and your mum's?
Yeah.
So go on, I'll let you take the stage. So tell us how you got to.
So I've been working in digital marketing for like 10 years or so. My degree was sports science, and obviously love running. My mum was working as a carer, something that it was really strange for her to work in, because she's not the greatest. Well, she doesn't necessarily like people that much, sort of thing. But gets on with them well enough. But we didn't expect her to go into that. But that's what she'd done. She'd cared for me and my brother, and then my dad. And so, but I could see she was unhappy doing it, and I was unhappy doing marketing. I wanted to change, and I'd done a couple like little Sunday jobs at running stores, and I was like, I just love it. I just love chatting to people about running all day long, and helping them get the joy out of it that I get out of it. So I said to her, I'd been talking about it for a while and as an idea, and people had said, well, stop talking about it and just get on with it and do it. So I said to my mum, I said, I think we could do this. I think we've got the contacts between us to get the brands on board and stuff like that, and I think we just have somewhere small or whatever and start out and see how it goes. And as I say, my mum's glass half empty, so she balances me because I'm glass half full, and she was a bit worried about it and stuff. But yeah, I got in touch with the brands, and either the guys that worked there were either people that raced against me mum and dad, or were people that raced against me. So that was really simple. We got the brands on board and stuff. So that opened the doors with what we'd want in the shop, and then I was chatting to one of the fellas from Sutton, and his next door neighbour, who's a good mate, did a bit of triathlon and things like that, and he owned Pets Emporium in St Helens, up near towards the YMCA, and the Lamb Pub and stuff, and he had the store next door that he was trying to sell at the time, that used to be the Key Cutters, and he said, why don't you have a word with him? So I went and had a word with him, and he understood what we were trying to do, from a running perspective, being a bit of a runner himself and things, and he got behind us and wanted to help us out and stuff like that. And so he wanted to sell the property, but he said basically we worked on a 2-year lease, where I said, well, we'll either have been successful enough that we'll buy the property from you, or we won't have been, and we'll close doors. obviously we hit a year after opening, we hit the pandemic. So it was, tough in a way for it, but actually, everyone got told to get out and be active and things, and running was one of those things that took off. And though we had to close our doors when we opened, everyone had taken up running and were running in whatever shoes they had at the time, and suddenly realised they loved doing it, but they probably needed some better shoes. So we had lots of people coming in, and we got to the end of our 2 years, and we'd actually done really well for ourselves, and it was good. And we thought about buying the property, but it needed a lot of work doing to it, which we'd sort of seen when we were doing it up. And so we thought, and we'd outgrown the space really in the 2 years. So it'd been 3 at that point after the end of the pandemic and stuff. So we started having a little look around at what other options there might be. And yeah, down on Bridge Street, what used to be the old sort of Bar X and Saints Bar and various other bars, had been split up into 2 commercial properties, and one side was perfect for us really, give us that breathing room and things. And so yeah, May 2022 we moved into our new space, and yeah, it's been really nice since we've moved in. We moved in at the time when they obviously coming out of COVID, we thought, oh yeah, everything's going to get back to normal now and things like that. And obviously, war in the Ukraine and fuel and energy crisis sort of hit. So as all small businesses,
it's one thing after another.
But that's it. So as all small businesses and things, you just struggle through and do what you got to do to keep the doors open really, through the hard times and stuff. But people are still running, and races are getting back on the calendar more, and London and Manchester are back in April where they should be. The St Helens 10Ks, back on it in March and things like that. So, we're still getting some the footfall and things, and keeping our doors open. And, yeah.
I think as well, it's a very sort of like a running store. It's very individual and niche, isn't it? Because I mean, certainly for our town, St Helens, you'd probably have to go into like a city centre to get anywhere sort of equivalents, but I think it's good that we've got this on our doorstep, and I've obviously been a customer of yours as well. I thought that's how we first met, wasn't it? I come in looking for some shoes for that Manchester race that you ended up winning, and I've still got those shoes now, so that in a good bit of nick. Where do you kind of see the store? Are you happy to kind of keep ticking over like this, or are you hoping to sort of expand, franchise? Where are you at with Made to Run?
Yeah, so I mean, this last year has been sort of a buckle down and just get through weather the storm sort of thing, on the back of obviously some benefits from the pandemic of people getting out running and stuff like that, but also races being cancelled, so people not racing as much and not spending as much necessarily on running stuff because they haven't got a big race coming up and things, and then obviously into the fuel and energy crisis and cost of living and stuff. So running shoes, as much as you need them as a runner, they're also a luxury item. So it's been buckle down and just weather the storm. But yeah, we'd like to keep moving and see what we can do. Funnily enough, actually, we're in talks at the moment, and hopefully by the time this has come out, you might need to cut this bit out if it hasn't occurred. But we're in the process of buying Natterjack's running store, which is in Liverpool and Southport, and they will become Made to Run stores in Liverpool and Southport. We're hoping that goes through at the end of this month. So that should be, we will. As I keep saying to my mum, it's we're conquer Merseyside as the running stores sort of thing, but we'll see how it goes.
No, sounds good, mate. Yeah, well done. I hope it does come off for you. I suppose, so we've established obviously you're running, and now we've divulged into kind of like you're giving back. I suppose in terms of kind of wrapping up this show, what is one piece of advice you could give to someone who wants to start running, who've maybe never done it before?
I think the thing is, you've got to make it fun. Running is, as we said, it's one of the easy sports to get into. Put your shoes on your feet, head out the door. But it's also really tough because it is just you. If you can get out with mates and convince someone else to run it, convince your partner to run with you, or something like that, then that's a win-win there, because you can make it more enjoyable. Depending on how well you get on with your partner, I suppose. It's a really, it is really fun. There's a lot of sort of health benefits, physical, mental health benefits to it. but you've got to make it fun. And I think always one of the toughest things that when I speak to people who said they've just started running and God, they're finding it hard work and stuff, is I say, well, are you running at a speed that you could hold a conversation at? Because a lot of people, did some running in school or played some sort of sport or something like that, and they think when they go out running, they think, right, well, I just get around as quick as I can and get it over with. But that makes it so much harder work for yourself, because it's, you're pushing body systems that haven't done that in years, or this memory of being able to leg it as a kid sort of thing, which as an adult it doesn't work. You don't work the same way. There's years on you that just aren't there. And so I always say, run so you can talk. So obviously, going out with someone else so you can talk to makes that so much easier. And it makes it, as I say, it makes it more fun, more enjoyable, because as you say, it's a de-stress. You get out in the trails, in St Helens. The great thing about St Helens as well is that, we're surrounded by some great trails and parks and stuff like that, where we head Billinge and Rainford and into the trails around there.
It wasn't until I got into running that I realised like how close we are to some lovely rural scenes, because more so when I was like marathon training, because when you train like doing little 5K, you can do that around your block, but certainly going up onto more, like you said, Billings, Rainford, them sort of ways, it's phenomenal.
And the Sankey Valley down that way, if you want a bit of flat sort of ground, and then others and things like that. But there's so many places, and that's a great thing. Once you start running, once you're up to 10Ks and things like that, when you go away on holiday somewhere, like you explore so many bits of off the beaten track that you wouldn't see if you were just going and driving around some sort of, a city in Italy or France or America or something like that. And you find little spots as well that, like, aren't the touristy ones. They're like the off-the-beat little restaurants and stuff that are amazing experiences, and it adds to the whole holiday then. But you wouldn't get it if you weren't going out on a run and just exploring it. And it's something else that it gives you, being able to go and do that. It
definitely give me that kind of more appreciation for sort of like the outdoors and, what's of it. Because I don't care what anyone says, when you're running and the sun's rising, if you get up early like I do in the morning, there's no better feeling. There really isn't. Springtime, sun's rising, it's about 6-7 o'clock. It's just phenomenal. What's next for you? What's Matt Crean got in the pipeline? Are you looking to smash any more, win any more marathons, or?
Well, I was meant to be doing Manchester Marathon again in April, but I've just had my second call up for an England vest to go and race out in Copenhagen, the Copenhagen Marathon. So
congratulations on that, mate.
Cheers, yeah. So that's in May now. So Manchester probably isn't going to happen for me, because trying to back it up with a one a month after in an England vest is maybe a risky option. You've already
won Manchester anyway, so you don't need to do it again. You're just showing off doing that. But no, of course. And plus, I think the what you've just said there is a lot bigger of a prestige achievement.
Yeah, so that that's it. Yeah, I think I'd probably upset quite a few of the selection body if I went and ran Manchester as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And then obviously, hopefully, Natterjack's from the business perspective is on there as well. And I've got a little baby on the way as well in September. So it's a big life-changing year, to be fair.
No, 100%. Yeah, congratulations again. Well, listen, Matt, I was always looking forward to this one, because I've always been a big enthusiast with running, albeit, nowhere near to the sort of speed and pace you do that, but I do love what it's all about. And when obviously, I decided to do this show, you was one of the obvious choices to get on, because I think there'd just be that sort of mutual kind of connection, and as we've established, we're hitting over 2 hours now, so there's certainly been definitely been some sort of a chatter on the way. But yeah, I just want to say, mate, you're absolutely smashing it.
Oh, cheers.
Doing really well. And I wish you all the best, obviously, with this year and all the things that you've just listed. I've been Daniel Hodges. This has been Matt Crehan. You've been listening to Hodge-Cast. Take care.